Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight we have guest Stephen Myers. He's the author of 2 books, Lost Technologies of the Great Pyramid, and his second book is titled Great Pyramid Prosperity Machine. We're going to get into a subject, I don't know why, I've been doing the show 4 years, going on almost 5. It's taken this long to just get down to have a subject just on the Great Pyramids and ancient technology. We've touched upon it with other guests, I'm sure countless times, but to have a show just really get into this subject. And Stephen Myers has done a lot of research on this, especially the idea of the Great Pyramids being ancient technology as a water pump. And that sounds a water pump? Yes. We'll get into all that, the Orion correlations and the problems with that. We'll have all those things. I'm sure we're going to have some people tonight. So, ancient aliens said. We'll get into all that. And you can call in and ask questions later in the show. We'll have the phone lines open. And of course, every Sunday night is the World Wide Web of Weird. And we got some weird to get to. So we better get rolling into the show. I do want to say, though, it was a tiring weekend for me. I work retail, as many of you know, as a manager, and Black Friday, I knew when I scheduled the show I was going to have to drink a lot of coffee tonight. I think I've gone through 4 cups, so I might be a little jittery tonight from the coffee, but it's well worth it for this great guest tonight, so let's go ahead and get right on into it. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight's guest, Stephen Myers, will be joining us after the World Wide Web of Weird. We have a lot to talk about, and even though it is a 3-hour show, it goes by really fast. We're using StreamYard, so we can show all your guys' comments here. Thank everybody for showing up in the chat rooms. We have a very great amount of people in YouTube and Facebook chat rooms for those listening on our Paranormal Radio Network. On the Paranormal Radio app, you can hear us on there, but if you are just tuning in there by chance, we are a webcast. We are a video show on YouTube and Facebook. So if you like to watch, come over watch, or just listen. And joining me in one reason to watch, I have my beautiful co-host Jamie D with us tonight. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
Doing well, Jason. Thank you.
Excited to finally get to talk about the pyramids. Like I said, doing this show so long, I'm surprised I've not had a show just dedicated to this topic, that it took this long, but we just needed the right guests. And I think Stephen Myers' theory is a good place to start off getting to talk about pyramids tonight. And of course, from St. Augustine, Florida himself, Rob Autry. How you doing tonight, Rob?
Doing great. Glad to be here and stoked to be talking about pyramids.
Oh, yeah. But we got some weird to get to. So speaking of that, let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, I thought we should just get right on into it. I think right after Sunday, was this Monday that happened? Officials still puzzled, about 5 days ago, officials still puzzled about the hovering object that prompted a lockdown in Washington, D.C. Yes. The first time I heard that there was a lockdown in Washington, D.C. because there was a unknown aerial object or flying, they said plane, not sure what it is, flying into their airspace, and they had to lock things down. I'm like, UFO maybe? Again, those listening on our radio network, Paranormal Soup Radio 24/7 network, we are a webcast. We do show videos and pictures. Tonight, I really didn't get videos. I didn't have any good UFO videos. There was two I saw that seemed interesting. But then I look and I could swear I debunked both of them as the same thing. Two different places, two parts in the world. One was in Russia. I can't remember what the other one was. And it was the sun setting. I'm like, really? This is what we come down to? At least give me some fake CGI stuff that made me go, ooh, no, maybe. All right. Anyway, speaking of UFOs, officials still puzzled about the hovering object that prompted the lockdown in D.C. This is from Fox News. Fake news. Security officials on Capitol Hill are still puzzled by what sparked the security threat to be issued Tuesday morning. It was Tuesday, that's right. That put both the White House and the Capitol on lockdown. The incident caused an abrupt security situation, with jets being scrambled and officers warning people outside of the Capitol facilities to stay far away. The U.S. Secret Service said personnel at the White House were told to remain in place. We don't know what the hell it was, one security officer told Fox News. Officials said the alert could have been sparked by birds, a drone, or possibly a weather anomaly. Security officials received different information regarding the location and speed of the object in question. Officials heard it was hovering and then were even given knots measuring its speed, sources said. Fox News is told by security officials that the situation went to Aircon Orange, which means a suspicious aircraft piercing the Washington security bubble. But security personnel are only supposed to say Aircon Orange for a few minutes before either upgrading the alert or downgrading the problem. Neither occurred with Tuesday morning's alert, but Capitol Police were sent a notification of a potential threat shortly after 8:30 a.m. People were allowed back in about 30 minutes later. Law enforcement sources initially told Fox News the lockdown was triggered after an aircraft moving east violated restricted airspace, but Fox News is now told officials may have to go back and review the radar to determine what exactly prompted the scare, with sources saying they got mixed signals at best as to what the potential aircraft could have been. They didn't identify it. They said the jet's up, and they were like, we don't have nothing. I don't know. Or did they see something? Now it's classified. I would think of the 1952 case with all the UFOs hovering over the Capitol. I don't know.
Move along. Nothing to see.
Not going to find much intelligent life there. All right, moving along. All right. From UFOs, maybe we're getting ready. Maybe this is why we're going on to this next article. Why our military, we got UFOs getting in our airspace, and maybe the alien threat's real. Army predicts cyborg soldiers by 2050. A new report has predicted the technologies that soldiers of the future will be equipped with on the battlefield. According to the Department of Defense, within as little as 3 decades, soldiers will be augmented with enhanced vision, enhanced hearing, muscle regeneration capabilities, and even telepathy. How do they do the telepathy? Entitled Cyborg Soldier 2050, Human Machine Fusion and Implications of the Future DoD, the report outlines types of technological advancements we can expect to see. To enable augmented vision, for example, future soldiers could be equipped with high-tech contact lenses containing screens and cameras capable of producing a type of augmented reality. What that makes me think of is like what they talk about, the technology they got from Roswell, from the aliens. They had like the night vision eyelids. This would not only make night vision possible without a hefty pair of goggles, but also provide analysis of surrounding area, highlighting points of interest, even enemy positions, and more. To improve performance, soldiers could also be equipped with a special optogenetic bodysuit capable of restoring and rejuvenating tired muscles whenever the need arises. Most notable of all, however, is the prediction that the future soldiers will be equipped with a direct neural link, enabling them to communicate using what can be only described as a form of digital telepathy. In addition to making it possible to stay in touch with one another at all times, this link could also enable soldiers to share critical information, status updates during combat. What makes me think of is I'm a big video game guy. It was Halo. I just picture these, they're going to get them exoskeleton suits. Soon, then they won't even have that. It'll just be robots.
Yep, they'll be knocking on the door. Are you Saracana?
Yeah, because they talk about augmenting all these soldiers. What are they trying to do? They're trying to get them to be able to compete with machines, because eventually it's just going to be machines.
Yep.
All right.
The world as we know it.
While we're trying to enhance our soldiers' abilities, now farmers are giving cows VR headsets. That's Article 3 here. Russian farmers are giving cows VR headsets. A rather bizarre experiment in Russia has seen dairy cows being equipped with virtual reality headsets. It might seem like an out-of-season April Fool's joke, but the above photograph is reportedly the real deal. A cow wearing a working virtual reality headset as part of a strange experiment designed to determine if a virtual environment can help to reduce anxiety and improve milk yield. The research, which is being carried out on a farm near Moscow, is so peculiar that it isn't exactly clear whether this is a genuine experiment or some promotional exercise. According to a press release, the virtual reality headsets had to be specifically adapted to fit the animals. Software developers were also hired to develop a unique summer field simulation program that will appeal to the cows and make them feel more relaxed, so they're not like, because they're locked in some kind of cage, make them feel like they're in an open field. It certainly is not outside the realms of possibility that this is a serious scientific study, especially given that similar experiments have been carried out before. Some farmers have even tried playing music to see if the cows helps them produce milk. Whether exposing animals to VR simulation will have any effect, however, remains unclear. And I just pictured like Cow Matrix. Mm-hmm. You take the red pill or the blue pill. Yep. I don't know.
We go down.
Yeah. Yeah. Say I have anxiety about being locked up and having a milk. I don't know. Speaking of animals, let's move it on to Article 4 from dailymail.co. UK. This is awful. 2 sheep are stabbed to death and marked with pentagrams in satanic sacrifice in New Forest National Park in Hampshire. Police investigating the unusual attacks in Hampshire New Forest National Park. Fears are growing that a satanic-style cult is roaming a national park after sheep and cattle were found slaughtered and sprayed with pentagrams. In a space of 5 days, there's been a spate of apparently cult-inspired attacks on animals within a few miles of each other in Hampshire New Forest National Park. 2 sheep were found fatally stabbed and marked with pentagrams. 3 cattle were brutally knifed to death. A heifer was injured, and a church was sprayed with satanic symbols. The mysterious incidents have all taken place over the last week, causing serious concerns for residents and farmers. Police are investigating the unusual attacks, 3 of which happened in a quiet village of Bromshaw. I think that's how you say it. Judy Rudd. Judy Rudd, who's lived in New Forest for 40 years, was walking her 2 dogs in Brumshaw when she came across the dead sheep. Miss Rudd said it was purple and green aerosol symbol sprayed on it. It was a pentagram and a cross. I had been stabbed to death. The wounds were in the side of the body by the rib cage. It was very unpleasant. Some people think it's sinister. Well, yeah. Dead sheep with pentagrams on them, I think it's pretty sinister. Her husband, Julian, added, I think it's reasonable to say it's not just lads messing about. The owner's very cut up about it and very worried. There's a certain amount of concern. It's unnerving. We lived here for 40 years. There's been nothing like this before. I don't agree that it's done to shock. You don't go around knifing animals simply to shock people. Well, there are some sick kids out there that do. Yeah. Okay, I'm just saying. It's related to something other than simply a desire to injure animals. It's either witchcraft or whatever. It's rather worrying. Well, I would be worried. I mean, whoever did this just as a stunt or whatever, they're still messed up. I mean, they're messed up, That's Reverend David Bacon. Yeah, go ahead. What do you say, Rob?
That's what I get the feel of this one is just a couple of jackasses wanting to make a prank,
Maybe.
I don't know.
Or just a couple jackasses that are really serious about it, but they don't know what the heck they're doing. Reverend David Bacon, vicar at the St. Peter's Church in Brimshaw, suggested the spate of killings could be a result of witchcraft or black magic. Reverend Bacon said, people are concerned. I've been here 15 years and seen a lot of stuff, but nothing like this. Could just be kids, but I don't like that. I don't think it is, given the context. There's been witchcraft around here for hundreds of years. The New Forest is well known for witchcraft and black magic happening. This has obviously gone up a level. The symbol drawn on the sheep is a satanic symbol that's quite well known. Yeah. Could be a couple kids, but I don't think so. Jessica Soley, 79, who lives near the church, said, we don't know who did it. I have no idea who would be capable of letting a sheep bleed to death. Well, and stabbing them, I think they've gone that far. They don't care. Exactly. Weird times. I mean, it reminds me of the 80s satanic scare, all the, weird satanic cults in the 80s when I was a kid. And I had a place called Devil's Bridge where they did stuff like this. But it was still stupid kids. They were trying to mess around. They were trying to do rituals into what the heck they were doing. Yeah. Dailymail.co. This is where you can get this article. It goes on a lot longer. I'm not going to read all of it because we don't have enough time. But I find it interesting. I do that this is happening, especially when you have the American Music Awards and all the performers performing all have a song, something to do with Lucifer or Satan. I'm not joking. Go watch the last one. I mean, literally. Every music performer did. Billie Eilish, remember her? It's oh, that's what Bill B means. We had Bill Bean on. I'm talking about her and watch. I see a video clip from the American Music Awards. Oh, I get it. Okay. Yeah. Yep. All right. This is really interesting. We've had a couple of these stories in the World Wide Web of weird over the years. And this is a new one from dailymail.co.uk as well. California mother is left stunned after spotting her late father kissing her unborn daughter in 20-week ultrasound. A California woman claims her ultrasound picture shows her late father kissing her unborn daughter. Chantel Carrillo, 30, from Santee, posted 20-week ultrasound to show social media, and friends were quick to notice something unusual. Right when I posted, like 30 seconds later, someone's like, "There's an angel kissing your baby." And you see a picture of her father holding another baby. I'm sure it's not the same baby. And it looks just like him. Chantel believes her late father, Chuck, who passed away in 2016, can be seen kissing her daughter in the womb. I show it a figure of the top left corner, which Chantel believes resembles her father. It has his nose, a little chubby cheeks, his little double chin, and my dad wore a hat like all the time. It looks like the bill of the hat, and his lips are just touching her so perfectly. The scan was posted alongside a picture of her father holding her first daughter, Marie, and Chantel said her father would be over the moon to be now a part of her second daughter's life. While she added it could be that her placenta looks like her father, she is overjoyed at this special picture. I will give this one, it's the whole pareidolia thing, and that's just her placenta or whatever. I don't know. It's pretty dang close to the picture comparison there.
If this was water ITC, I would say that was pretty spot on.
Right. That's exactly what I was thinking
too.
I mean, just compare the pictures. The nose is very similar. The mouth, everything's very similar. It could have looked like some other Joe Schmo, if it was just random. Yeah. But it looks like her father.
There's Joe Schmo kissing her baby. Who is that?
Yeah, no, I'm just cool. I know as an investigator, the mind looks for faces, looks for patterns and that. But man, that's pretty unusual. And I've seen a couple of the other ones we've had on before were family members too. At least one of them I know was a family member that showed up in the ultrasound and looked a lot like the family member. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe that's now you're not going to see paranormal investigators pulling out ultrasound. Yeah. Who's going to lay down? Let me put an ultrasound to their belly. We get some ghost. Yeah, you don't want to see what's on my belly. All right. Number six. This is a cool story, and we got time, so I can read this one. And you hear these stories of hikers that get lost, and then they meet somebody in the woods, and it turns out that person might have been a ghost. This is from Asia Times. A Taiwanese hiker who went missing for 10 days and was found by the indigenous villagers on Wednesday morning claimed that he had been guided by a ghost of a couple he met in the mountains. Taiwan News reported the family of 6-year-old Song Ruzing. I'm trying to just call him Sung. Family of Sung, an employee at Formosa Heavy Industries, lost contact with him on November 10th after he left his home to hike in the mountains of Pingtung. Sung was spotted Wednesday by a local villager and immediately escorted to the Chunri precinct of the Pingtung County Police Department. According to UDN, Sung used stream water and natural sugar from plants as his energy source since he had been only prepared food for sufficient for one day. With tears welling up in his eyes, Sung expressed gratitude for the rescue crew's nonstop efforts. He said earlier on his hike, he was climbing a rock wall. He lost his glasses, causing him to become disoriented. He managed to find a cave and stayed there for several days, but realized if he were to survive, he would have to venture out. Sung also told reporters that after he left the cavern, he met a mysterious ghost couple who believed to be the ancestral spirits of the indigenous Taiwanese accompanied him for 2 hours, and then the trio chatted about everyday life as they walked alongside one another. Sung claimed that after some time, he turned around and could not see the couple, but instead found the path leading to the foot of the mountain. The Pingtung County Fire Department said the rescue mission lasted for 10 days with the help of 111 police officers and 284 volunteers and 2 helicopters. Rescue workers consist of local hunters, volunteers, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's interesting, he believes they were ghosts that saved him, that helped him find his way to the path. Yeah, we've heard stories like this before.
Yeah, I've had a couple of experiences like that. So, ghosts, guardian angels,
like in the woods, like guiding you, or just like saving you.
Sort of, yeah. And it's just.
But they're like real people. Like you thought they were a real person.
I'm not sure.
See, that's a thing. Yeah.
Well, what did you think when it was happening?
I thought they were real, but just like this, you turn around and they're gone, and it's like, the hell just happened?
See, I find those stories, like you hear the typical ghost story, somebody sees a misty form or a translucent person or whatever, and you're like, that's a ghost. But when it's like an experience where they talk to the person, they think they're totally real and physical and they're there, I find those one of the most interesting kinds of phenomenon, because what is happening in the universe for the spirit to appear physical, touch somebody and make them think they're really there.
Yeah. I had that happen when I was a kid too. And yeah, I thought this lady was real. I would see her every day and I would always try to talk to her, but she wouldn't say anything. But she was like as real as looking at you standing in front of me. And I mentioned it to people and they're like, no, there's nobody here by that description.
See, well, it was me with my, my unborn half sister that I saw. I have memories of her. To me, I thought she was a real little girl. That's why I think these stories always fascinate me when somebody has this experience. Like they were physically there, but then they weren't. They were gone.
Yep.
And
I had the woman in my hall, same thing. I talked to her 5-6 days in a row. Thought it was my mom.
See, yeah. I did. What are they manipulating in reality to be able to be physically here? And it could be convincing enough that you don't know they're dead, that they're a ghost. That there's a big difference between that and seeing like the misty form, which I've seen that too.
Yeah.
How are they able to pull that off? Is the question. I wonder sometimes if it's because you don't know they're dead. It's like the quantum effect or something. Without you knowing they're dead, they're able to present themselves.
Maybe.
I don't know. It's like the tree that falls on the forest. I don't know. Like once you acknowledge that they're dead, then boom, they fade. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. This last one has to do a lot with what we'll be talking about tonight. It's from dailygrail.com. 2 years ago, a big discovery of the Great Pyramid was announced in a paper of Nature, the paper in Nature. A large void at least 100 feet in length above the Grand Gallery. The find constituted the first major inner structure find found in the Great Pyramid since the 19th century. The new discovery is achieved by the Scan Pyramids Project, a cross-disciplinary, I am really not bad tonight, cross-disciplinary multi-institution nation effort that has employed various high-tech, non-destructive methods such as infrared thermography and muon radiography to scan the Great Pyramid for hidden cavities or structures. Now, 2 years later, the Scan Pyramids team have released a new video announcing that a large cavity, which generated some controversy with questions raised as to whether it truly was there or is just some sort of scanning artifact, has been confirmed by more scans taken from new points within the pyramid, including the so-called reliving chamber and that sits above the king's chamber. The big void was again observed from these new measuring points, confirming and refining the results published in 2017. The cavity is just above the Grand Gallery, between 10 and 15 meters above. It's a minimum length estimated initial at 30 meters, has been reevaluated to 40 meters minimum, probably in one single section. However, the mission scientists continue to debate about a slope. And if you see the video to this, you see them like setting up their equipment. You're like, that thing you got, that really tells. And you have like this big thing under the base of it. Like they're doing all these ways to scan. I don't know. The video also discusses other aspects of the project, including the other cavity found behind the entrance to the pyramid, as well as the lack of anomalies between the top of the chambers and the peak of the pyramid. It's okay. The scans are there. All right, can we just drill a little hole? We'll ask our guest tonight. Like it's like, can we just drill a little hole up there? Speaking of, we do have our guest here. I think I'm get him added here before I forget before I go to the show. How you doing tonight, Stephen?
Very good. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, we're going to go to commercial break here soon, but I thought I'd get your your little insight into this. Did you hear a little bit of what I was reading about this article here about them finding this cavity?
Yeah, about the scan. Well, a scan was produced, and the result of analyzing the information gained in the scan was that the people that did the scan said that there's a passage or chamber in there above the Grand Gallery. So we can talk about that more in greater detail.
We will get into that tonight. Real quick before we go to commercial break, why can't we just like drill a little hole? Why can't they get to it? What prevents them from just confirming it besides going beyond a scan? I know they don't want to destroy or touch, but I mean, is there anything they could do just to confirm this?
Oh, they can. Yeah. If they pay enough money, they can drill a hole. That's the short answer.
Enough money. I'm sure they got the cash. Come on.
Whoever's doing the scans probably spent $5 million already.
That's just to scan it,
fees and everything else. So if they can pay more money, they can get a hole drilled.
That's what I want. Scan it all you want. I'm not convinced until you drill a hole, put a little camera up there, and show me something. I guess I'm
Fair enough.
not. I just want to see. It's not that I don't believe it's there. I believe there's a lot inside these pyramids we don't know, and that's what drives me crazy. I want to know, and I want to see us not be hindered by, I guess money. I guess it's always money, and it always comes down to that. But it's like, come on, but we've had these things sitting here for 10,000 years or whatever. Let's crack these puppies open. Let's find out what it is. So that's why I'm excited to have you on the show tonight. I want to talk about this subject. I'm super excited about it, and we will have the phone lines, guys, open after the first commercial break. Don't forget, help us out on Patreon. $2 a month. It helps the show, so we can do the StreamYard and the radio network. All that costs money, so everything you do can help out. But we'll be joining us after the commercial break is Stephen Myers. We're going to talk about the Great Pyramid, the water pump, the prosperity machine. Forget all that tonight, and you can call in after the second commercial break. Not after this one. After the second commercial break, I will open the phone lines. All right, guys, we'll be right back after this short commercial break.
Okay, I'm good.
He is conducting an experiment into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself, and the experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
This fall, a new hard-hitting police drama is coming to Friday night. He was a well-to-do cop transferred to a troubled precinct downtown. His new partner is a space traveler with a passion for justice. It's Yuppie and the Alien.
Look, you might vaporize dissidents in Alpha Centauri, but in this precinct, we do it by the book.
I'm so terribly sorry, Captain.
Googa, I'm sorry. Don't miss this one-of-a-kind police drama. They're fighting crime the hard way in designer clothes with $250,000 sports car and a UFO.
Partner, let's go cruise in the car and look moody.
One tough downtown precinct, two outsiders doing things their way. Yuppie and the Alien on VBC.
Paranation Magazine is a new paranormal magazine based out of Denver, Colorado. Our goal isn't just to give you the best paranormal content out there, but to promote paranormal unity. We're doing this by giving everyone an opportunity to tell their stories and to share their experiences. For more information, follow us on Facebook at Paranation Magazine and soon, paranationmag.com.
Somewhere between science and superstition, there is another world, a world of darkness. Nobody expected it. Nobody believed it. And nothing could stop it. The one hope. The only hope. The Exorcist. Warner Brothers presents William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist. The Exorcist, directed by William Friedkin. The Exorcist, rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Bring life to the dead. 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 Enter the occult world of necromancy. You were brought here for one purpose: necromancy.
A ceremony dating back to the pre-Christian era. It's the art of reviving the dead. It requires involvement with evil spirits by the person performing the act.
The devil god brings life to the dead.
No, please. No, please.
And death to the living. Necromancy. Starring Orson Welles and Pamela Franklin. From Cinerama releasing. In color, rated PG, parental guidance suggested.
Switch to DCS ranging.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe, 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Stephen Myers. Stephen Myers is the author of 2 books. His first book is titled Lost Technologies of the Great Pyramid. His second book is titled The Great Pyramid Prosperity Machine. Author, lecturer, independent researcher, Stephen Myers has studied the Great Pyramid for over 20 years to understand how this ancient wonder of the world was built and why. His research includes traveling to Egypt to conduct extensive on-site research at the Giza Plateau. Stephen Myers has written numerous magazine articles and given many lectures on the subject of the Great Pyramid, compiling his research into 2 books which provide a comprehensive and detailed explanation of how the Great Pyramid was built and why. He also founded a non-for-profit foundation dedicated to understanding how and why the Great Pyramid was built. The mission of this foundation is to redevelop these ancient but advanced technologies to help our modern but troubled world. The foundation's website is www.thepump.org. Steve Myers lives in southwestern Oregon with his wife and his 2 dogs. This is the first time we've got to have a guest on to really delve deep into the Great Pyramids, ancient Egypt, and what ancient technology could do for humankind. I believe there was a past civilizations that had way far more advanced technology than any of the academia has ever given an ounce of imagination to. There's so much more that we don't know. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Ancient Aliens, but they get a lot of things wrong. They like to speculate a lot, but we're really glad to have Stephen on tonight to really get into what was the pyramid for? What was it really for? Isn't that the biggest question? Why put all that effort and work into whoever built it? Why did they do it? Was it just for the tomb some dead dude? I don't think so. That's what we're going to get tonight. And we will have the phone lines open after the second commercial break, so just hang in there. We will get you on to talk to Stephen, but let's go ahead and get to our guest. Welcome to the show, Stephen, and it's an honor to have you on. Oh, of course, I have to unmute you. Hold on. There you go.
Well, great. Yes, it's great to be on your show, Jason. I really appreciate it.
Now, give us a little bit of your background. How did you get up? Somebody has to go to Egypt and to study the pyramids. I mean, what got you down this path to look into the ancient technology of ancient Egypt?
Well, my background is very technical in nature. My education and occupation are technical in nature. So I enjoy technology and history. So during high school, when I studied World War II, I was interested in the range that airplanes could fly and battleships and that type of thing. I wasn't interested in generals or politics or anything like that. I like the technical aspects of things. That's my nature. I'm an amateur radio operator, have the commercial class FCC radio telephone license, and a number of other degrees and certificates.
So you're a ham.
I am a ham.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great hobby. So do that and a few other things. I collect antique gasoline engines, the old one-lungers, the
Oh yeah.
hit and miss. So I like technology and the history of technology. So if you like both of those subjects, then for me, the focus of my interest was on the Great Pyramid. It's a 45-story skyscraper, the tallest building in the world for at least 4,500 years, and built in ancient times. So it certainly exhibits some high technology. So I enjoy the technology aspect of this construction project we call the Great Pyramid.
And that's the thing. That's what I got to get. I'll be honest. I have not read his books yet, and I really do want to, because I've been fascinated with the pyramids. I'll admit it. Like before there was ancient aliens, I was an ancient alien theorist. So I did my own little correlations and stuff. But but my main thing is aliens, people, whoever built it. To me, I've always felt that when I grew up as a kid, you'd always see the pyramids, and it's a tomb, and the mummy's in the tomb, and it's inside the pyramid, which they never found a mummy inside a pyramid, as far as I know, right? I mean, there's no evidence that it was actually a tomb of any kind. At least the Great Pyramid.
No, none of that's the direct physical evidence is that no mummy's carcass has been found in any of the Egyptian tombs. And Egyptologists say, the reason for that is people in ancient times stole all the mummies and the burial treasure before we could steal it. So, but no, it's certainly not a tomb.
No, I mean, what I've always said about the pyramids is, who's going to waste that much real estate space, that much labor, that much time, that much sacrifice to build a tomb that massive for one dead guy, or even his family? They're dead. Who cares?
True. John F. Kennedy died in the height of his career and was highly revered. In our civilization, we basically stuck his body in a hole in the ground and had a little flame that, the eternal flame. So no, it doesn't make sense to spend all that effort to build a Great Pyramid without having a bigger return on investment.
And as a kid, that's what always didn't sit right with me. That way, I was like, no. I of course, my imagination went to aliens, but but as a kid, that was my fascination. It's like, there's no way that's a tomb. There has to be more of a purpose to it than that.
Well, if you were born, let's say 1,000 years ago, in the Middle Ages, you would have been told, instead of ancient aliens, you would have been told, oh yeah, the Great Pyramid, it's a tomb. In the Bible, there are big buildings in Egypt that are granaries. So in the Middle Ages, they thought the Great Pyramid was a granary. And in fact,
really,
a presidential candidate, Bob Carson, or whatever his name is, there's a film of him saying that the Great Pyramid was a granary. So if and then next year they'll come up with a whole new idea. But the best idea is usually one that has the biggest return on investment, I would think.
Right. Like, I think there'd be better ways to deal with your grain than building that. I mean, grain's important, I'm sure.
Yeah, not a very good granary, I can tell you that. And it's
right.
The Great Pyramid is not a very good tomb either.
So what was your first hints or clues that the Great Pyramid was a machine?
Well, I read books. If you're interested in the Great Pyramid, certainly 25 years ago, you go down to the library and check out a book. And those books were written by Egyptologists. And they all tell you, oh, yeah, the working people, they cut the casing stones, the outside stones, with extreme precision, and they're very heavy. So then the Egyptologists say, and they drug those stones up a big ramp that had to be bigger than the Great Pyramid itself and set them in place.
Right.
So, hey, that's an explanation. You have the direct physical evidence of the Great Pyramid, and these people come up with an explanation. You know, they tell a story. So then I said to myself, oh, okay, that makes sense. All I need to see, though, is the demonstrations that validate their hypothesis, you know, of stone cutting with hand tools, you know, chip, 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 to make extremely precise stone cutting. They say, Egyptologists say, oh yeah, the working people did that all day long. But the reality is it has never been demonstrated how the ancient people in the Nile cut even the casing stones to extreme precision. It's never been done.
Not with the tools they believe they had.
Right. They say how it was done. So the next thing would be to provide a demonstration.
I've seen them try. I've seen some documentaries, and it just was like, yeah, it doesn't look like you guys are getting it.
What they show,
moving it even.
Yeah, what they show in the documentaries, if you really look at them, is how it wasn't done. So,
exactly. This is how they didn't do it, people, because we are failing.
And then they also have forklifts right off camera, and then they'll move a 2-ton stone a little bit, but the largest stones are 70 tons.
Well, okay, let's just get to that. So 70-ton stone. How far away was the quarry where they would have had to cut it?
400 miles.
Exactly.
All researchers, even Egyptologists, agree that the largest stones came 400 miles upstream from the Nile River. That's where the quarries were for the largest stones. All researchers also agree that the stones were moved on barges.
It had to have been to get that far. Yeah. There's no way they're dragging them that way.
To the close to the building site. Also, a lot of the quarries were across the river, so the stones were moved on barges, at least across the river. A lot of people contend that was the case, as well as I.
But moving the stone out of the quarry to the barge itself seems like a very hard task to do.
It does. Everything about the Great Pyramid is a hard task to do, but it was done. The Great Pyramid is the result of all those hard tasks being done, but it's a really hard task to lift a battleship up. But they do it in the Panama Canal all the time.
Yeah,
and the
there's
people
a way, I guess.
Back muscles.
Well, yeah, they're not doing it with the back muscles. That's my thing. It's I'm sure they did it, but I don't think they did it with the tools or the technology they think they had then. But that's the thing. How old is the Great Pyramid as far as you can tell?
Well, the focus of my research is how it was assembled and why it was assembled. So when it was assembled is beyond the scope or the focus of my research, but certainly I think it's much older than traditional Egyptologists say it was built. Egyptologists used to say that the Sphinx and the pyramids on the Giza Plateau were built within a generation or two of each other. But now most people think that the Sphinx is much older than 4,500 years because of the water erosion. That research was done by Dr. Robert Schoch, who was brilliant researcher in his own right. So I would say that the age of the Great Pyramid is much older than traditionally thought.
I mean, why build the Sphinx there if it wasn't a pyramid, right? I mean,
well, somebody built a Sphinx and somebody built some pyramids.
Well, how old does Egyptology officially kind of put the Great Pyramid at?
About 4,500 years ago.
Right.
So
I've had people speculate that it's 10,000 years old.
Oh, yeah.
You think that's possible that it's that old?
Oh, yeah. Why not? I think that it's probably at least pre-last catastrophe. I'm a catastrophist. And, the history of the earth has been punctuated by certain catastrophes. Could be just a societal catastrophe like a plague or a civilization that went in decline, kind of like our civilization.
Atlantis. You've heard Atlantis come to this.
Weather change. Also, asteroid hit. Could have been a biblical flood if you want to go that route. But the Great Pyramid was probably built before that.
Well, that's, it seems like it's the possibility, of this being there before. I mean, we're talking, because it would have been there. We're going past 4,500 years. It would have gone back before Egypt became Egypt, basically, before the Egyptian civilization really even took off.
Right. There's various timelines that have been proposed. Egyptology has come up with certainly a sequence of pyramid construction and associated different pyramids with different pharaohs or leaders or kings. But everything that Egyptologists say, I take with a grain of salt, and more than likely it's wrong. So,
well, they sure don't want to change their tune.
A good way to determine when the Great Pyramid was built is to find a civilization that can build the Great Pyramid. So that hasn't been demonstrated, that the agrarian society that is described by Egyptologists can make a casing stone. They can't even make a single component. So
it seems like Egypt could have been an outpost of another civilization, and like I said, the Atlantis theories come up, that they could have been in a way in a new settlement or outpost from another civilization like Atlantis, 10,000 years ago or more. And
but who built the Great Pyramid is actually beyond the scope of my research.
I know, I get that, and it's beyond, I think, a lot of everybody else's scope. But it is the question to start too. I mean, in a way,
somebody built it.
It's the why. Why did they?
Somebody, some leader or some group of geniuses said, "We don't have a Great Pyramid, and we want one. We want one so bad that we're going to devote the effort and the resources to build one." And that's what happened in ancient times. And those people were very capable people. And I give glory to the builders of the Great Pyramid for their accomplishment. And then they went to the effort and the struggle to and the investment cost to build the Great Pyramid. That's what happened.
Now, there's the Egyptians had hieroglyphics that they wrote all over their tombs and stuff, but not in the Great Pyramid, right? There's no hieroglyphics in the Great Pyramid.
There's no formal writing in the Great Pyramid at all. There's some quarry marks and certainly graffiti from Roman and ancient Greek times. There's some graffiti and certainly some graffiti from the 1850s and later. So, but no formal writing. You want to know why?
Yeah.
Well, tombs like where King Tut is buried, and all of that has all kinds of writing. The holes in the ground in the Valley of the Kings, where the pharaohs are found, has all kinds of writing. Temples have all kinds of writing, but the Great Pyramid has no writing outside or in formal writing, and that's because it's a machine. It doesn't need any formal writing, just like the engine in your vehicle doesn't have formal writing inside of it, maybe a few part numbers, but it doesn't need writing. It's important for the Great Pyramid not to have writing in it,
because of what it was being used for, right? I mean, at some point this was a machine providing a purpose to that area for whatever people. So what was the purpose? What is this machine? What does it do?
Well, we think that the Great Pyramid was a machine that functioned. It actually did something. It was built for the living, not for the dead. And that the Great Pyramid was infrastructure for the civilization that built it. They didn't want to tell people 10,000 years from when the Great Pyramid was built. They didn't want to tell those people that they knew pi, or they didn't want to point some vents to stars that they're not pointing to now. But what the Great Pyramid did was what a hydroelectric dam does, or what the highway system does, or what the electric grid does, is it provides prosperity. Or what the Erie Canal did, provides prosperity. A huge investment to build the Great Pyramid, huge structure, just as the Hoover Dam, bigger than the Great Pyramid, huge investment in when it was built, but it pays off in dividends, much greater than the cost. And the Great Pyramid did that by being a water pump. That water provided prosperity for the civilization that built it. It powered machinery, certainly was used for irrigation, also used to make compressed air, and a whole host of other purposes. So the Great Pyramid wasn't just built by knuckle draggers to appease some death cult, but it was built by very wise geniuses to improve their own lives and the lives of their kids. The Great Pyramid provided food for the people's kids. They could eat every day. Isn't that an amazing structure? That's the biggest purpose ever proposed for the Great Pyramid, with the highest return on investment, was that it was a water pump.
Well, you talk about return on investment, in this water pump would be a big theme for a civilization that had to depend on the Nile flooding and be unpredictable. To build control water would be a huge factor for a civilization to grow.
Sure.
Because they just to depend on the weather for farming isn't enough. You need to be able to control irrigation. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
I agree with you. They do need to control irrigation. The largest structure in North America is the Grand Coulee Dam in central Washington on the Columbia River. That dam has huge water pumps built into the dam that pump up to a higher lake, higher than the dam itself. Banks Lake, it's called, or the Grand Coulee, and the water inside is the Banks Lake. But anyway, that irrigates 1,500,000 acres year round. Those farmers in eastern Washington, which is desert area, get irrigation year round. And the largest structure in the Valley of the Nile is actually functioning right now and is used for irrigation, and that is the High Aswan Dam. The electricity is used as a keystone to supply a vast irrigation network. So in ancient times, the people of the Valley of the Nile needed infrastructure to pump water, and in modern times, the people in the Valley of the Nile need
they still do
pump water.
Yeah, well, yeah, they still do. They still have to come up with big major projects to make sure everybody's getting their water, and especially in the desert now.
Right.
Well, this is one of the things I wonder. How long do you think it took to build the Great Pyramid? Just the Great Pyramid.
Well, most people come up with the idea that if it took 20 years, that a stone would have to be set in place every 2 minutes. But I usually say something around 7 years, just so people can have their heads explode. But
yeah,
when the stone every 2 minutes calculations are based on a 10-hour workday, but water locks operate 24 hours a day year round. I mean, all water lock systems do. So they were able to use water locks. Also, if you consider Egyptology has been around for about 200 years, that science, they have yet to make a single casing stone. So you'd think they'd make one just to shut people up.
Right.
But it's just a rock and some bronze chisels.
Have they tried though? Have they tried? I mean, because I think they know they would fail.
Well, they can't do it.
Yeah,
it can't be done. No one can do it. Even professional stonemasons can't do it.
Right. That seems like a big dilemma.
5x7. It's a surface about the size 5 by 7 feet to the precision of 1/50th of an inch. Your thumbnail. So it can't be done.
Well,
this. But anyway,
this is the thing.
They've been around for 200 years. Egyptology haven't even made a casing stone. So if they were responsible for building the Great Pyramid, it would never be built.
They would have gotten out of the blueprint stage.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing.
The Erie Canal, when built, was 4.5 feet deep, and the barges had a capacity of 70 tons. Isn't that interesting?
No.
70 tons. So in the 1830s, kids worked on the Erie Canal, and they could move 70-ton payloads and lift them. But now in the 21st century, Egyptology can't do it. So,
well, you would think they would jump on the lock system.
Yeah, the Erie Canal was able to move the weight of the Great Pyramid higher than the Great Pyramid in 2 years.
Yeah, so, water can do amazing things. Yeah, that's the thing. You think they would at least like, okay, this hasn't been working. We can't figure this out. What's so controversial of believing they created a lock system to do this, to the funnel, well, I'm trying to picture this too. So a lock system like that, they would actually have to like funnel, have a lock system that goes all the way up to the Great Pyramid, like build around the pyramid a lock system so they could get the stones up there, or would it require that?
You're very intuitive and understand. But how the Great Pyramid was built was that they provided a source of water to the building site. And that's not that ridiculous of an idea. Other researchers consider the idea that the original builders were able to bring water to the building site. That includes Christopher Dunn. If you ever have him on the show, ask him about that. And the first stones they set in place were the casing stones for the first level, if you will. Right. So they were the precision stone cut stones on the outside. So that made a square wall about 4.5 feet, 5 feet tall at the building site. So they fill those casings, that wall impounded by the casing stones, which are cemented together watertight. The few that remain are still cemented together watertight. They fill that area with water, and it became a square pond on the building site. And they had a series of water locks that connected from that pond all the way to the Nile River, and canals and water locks. So they brought stones on barges. The next stones they brought were the interior stones for the first level. Those stones on barges came up the water locks effortlessly, and they were able to move the stone off of the barge and set it into the pond. And when that process was completed, the first level of the Great Pyramid was finished. And then the next stones to be set in place was the next level of casing stones, all the way around, cemented together. And then they added additional water and rose.
So they just keep building the lockup. They just keep building a lockup as they go.
Yeah. On our website at thepump.org, we have a free video series that people can watch that has a series of videos, YouTube videos, and see that whole process, how they did everything, move the heaviest stones, the casing stones, and all of that. We also have a video series that building the Great Pyramid using water locks and barges. That's a YouTube, or excuse me, that's a DVD that you can get from Amazon. And my book, Lost Technologies of the Great Pyramid, is how the Great Pyramid was assembled. So there's a lot to it.
So you think with doing that system, though, it took them 7 years?
Sure. Why not?
Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, that makes more sense to me. Okay, I'll say this because I wanted to get to, because 20 years is what they said, placing a stone every 2 minutes, not using locks, like men dragging them up there, just seems impossible. The other impossible thing is a 20-year commitment or more.
Yes,
because people are like, especially that don't live very long, are like, I'm going to care about something that's going to be built after I'm dead.
Right. That's true. And that's an issue of return on investment,
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to give you $1 million, but it'll be in 300 years from now. It didn't help.
It don't jive.
Yeah.
It don't jive. And somebody's not going to commit to that project. The pharaoh or whoever was in charge of it is I don't care.
Yeah, you and I are going to build a project, and in let's say 7 years, your kids are going to be able to eat every day, and you will have a life of leisure. That's a pretty exciting prospect. And that's what the Great Pyramid was. That's what
it's more likely to commit to it if it's only 7 years, though.
Yeah, 7 years.
Wow. And it's ingenious. It's just the genius of discovering to use water as your moving mechanism, as your mechanism to place these stones is ingenious.
It is ingenious, and it is also consistent with the direct physical evidence. There's a lot of evidences on the Giza Plateau that indicates there's a profound link between water and the Great Pyramid. That includes Sir Flanders Petrie, an early Egyptologist, found Nile earth inside the Great Pyramid, sediment, if you will.
That's
And
good proof there.
Yeah, Herodotus described the Great Pyramid as being like an island surrounded by water. And he could have been looking at the Great Pyramid when it still had the wall around the Great Pyramid that had water.
Was that like 2,500 years ago, or Herodotus?
Yeah, he was the 5th century BC historian.
Oh no, 5th century BC.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So,
2,500 years ago.
Yeah, so the Great Pyramid was pretty ancient when he saw it. So he also indicated that there was an artificial duct connected to the Great Pyramid. You know, what that exactly means is up to debate, either an input or an output of water. Possibly.
Well, I've heard it had a moat. I've heard the pyramid had a moat. That they talked about that.
Up until the 18th century, there was a enclosure wall built
right.
the Great Pyramid. The early Napoleon savants that were in Egypt in 1803 or so, their early drawings depict that enclosure wall, which is now gone. So yes, there was a wall around the Great Pyramid, and we think that was part of the construction process, and that they built these water locks up the face, you know, a stair-stepped locks that's indicated on our video series at our website.
So it would be like they make a big pond to start with the rocks as the base layer, and then they make a new pond on top of it, and they just keep going up.
Yeah, built level by level, with each level completed before they make the next level. Sir Flanders Petrie felt that the casing stones for each level were set in place first, and then the interior stones were set in place for that level. That was his interpretation of the construction process, the sequence of construction. And that's the exact sequence that we propose, although we also propose a method of how they moved and lifted those stones. So it's quite a process. And they use specialized barges to lift stones and set them in place, and the whole thing. It's fascinating.
Well, have we ever found? Has Egyptology ever found any of these barges like sunken, or any evidence of these ancient barges they would have used?
There's no artifacts that indicate or that are remnants of barges used to build the Great Pyramid. Certainly in the Valley of the Nile, there's some drawings of great big barges that carried 2 obelisks at the same time. So that's quite interesting. And
well, it's not like they're made out of stone. They're not going to last, especially if they were more than 4,500 years ago.
Yeah. So there is no. But you know, people say, "Oh, well, there's no evidence." So yeah, well, there's no evidence of a great big ramp either. So there's no evidence of a magic wand that an alien used.
Well, no, that's totally true.
Vibration, you know, they always say, you know, the
sound. They use sound. I'm like, okay, they'd be deaf. Yeah. Let me see you use sound to do it. Let me see you yell at it.
On the sound, they were lifting a grain of sand, you know, or a styrofoam ball or something. I mean, I can blow on a potato chip and move it, but that doesn't mean that that's how they move the big stones of the Great Pyramid. So,
well, your explanation seems very logical to me, very more realistic. So, why as Egyptologists, why have they pushed back on this? Why haven't they not? I mean, it's not like we're talking about aliens or something crazy. It doesn't seem crazy at all. So, why haven't they? Why are they sticking to their guns to the ramp theory and everything? Why won't they even look at this?
Oh, they're intractable. They are. You know, it's incredible. And I don't even know anyone past the 8th grade that believes the ramp story or the precision stone cutting story. It's just, it's bizarre. Sciences throughout history come and they go. There was a science called phrenology about the bumps on people's heads. And that was taught in college, less than 70 years ago. And you could, but you know, that science didn't hold up to the scientific method and has essentially disappeared. And Egyptology is in the same crisis now because of the weather erosion on the Sphinx. You know, and also their lack of the use of the scientific method and other things. Egyptology is actually in crisis. It is the richest science in the world, with all of their priceless artifacts and regular people buying tickets to go view those priceless artifacts. So I don't know, there's
It is a business.
Can you believe right now around the world there are departments of Egyptology in universities? Isn't that bizarre? Shame on Boston University. You have a department of Egyptology. So it's just odd. It would be like having a department of cow jump over the moonology. You can read about it.
Well, it's not just Egyptology, though. I had a guest on, Heather Lynn, who's an archaeologist. In archaeology in itself, there's a lot of denial. There's a lot of suppression of information, it feels like.
Well, it seems like it. One information that's suppressed is that they don't engage in the scientific method. They get a degree by sitting in a classroom and then declare edicts, but that's not science. If they want to be storytellers or whatever, that's fine. But to call themselves scientists is a whole different matter. You got to use valid research techniques and the scientific method if you want to be scientists. So, and they have all their bizarre mythology about how the Great Pyramid was built and everything else. The biggest hindrance to understanding ancient Egypt is Egyptology.
Well, yeah, what I'm getting at here is that it seems purposeful. Like they do know the truth. They do know things aren't accurate, but they're purposely misconstruing the information and telling people a false perception for a reason. And what is that reason?
Well, you could look at it just in a crass manner by saying they've already written books about the workers with the big back muscles and the ramp and the pharaoh and the type of hat he wore. They like to talk about the type of hat he wore. But if a new discovery is made that nullifies that idea, then their books are worthless. So
then you get to write a bunch of new books and make a bunch of new money. That's what I'm just saying.
It doesn't work that way. When they had the Piltdown skull was discovered. The leading anthropologists, there it is, missing link right there.
Right.
A whole generation of anthropologists wrote their doctoral thesis on the Piltdown skull. And they couldn't even see the file marks on the Piltdown skull, the experts. Well, it took 40 years later, then anthropologists said, that's just fake. That's a hoax. So what happened was the first generation of anthropologists, they died off, and the next generation of anthropologists knew that it was a hoax.
Baloney. Yeah. They didn't want to sign their papers to it.
Nobody changed their minds. Isn't that interesting?
They had to wait till all the people left their positions at universities to
died
get the truth out.
Yeah.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. This is the ongoing problem in archaeology and anthropology is they have to keep a narrative going because the people controlling the narrative are the people who set the narrative, the people in charge of the universities and the grants and scholarships.
It does seem like a plot, a wall of just a wall that's hard to break. But sciences, especially soft sciences like Egyptology, advance funeral by funeral. So,
well, that's it. It's
one generation, it's just bizarre. How can they say the things that they say and get away with it? I mean,
well, that you got to wonder if, young Egyptologists, people that are getting into this that have read all this stuff and they start really doing the research and go, wait, this doesn't make sense. Well, but then they get crushed by the system they belong to.
And that happens. It's that is the nature of things, but we're in a revolution of thought, revolution of understanding of mankind's distant antiquity and the capabilities that our species demonstrated. So things are changing, never fast enough, but you don't, there's mainly a wall of silence with Egyptology, and about this idea that the Great Pyramid actually helped people. But I know this: most Egyptologists, the largest stone they've ever moved is the one in their kidney.
Well, I also wonder, is it something more insidious too?
Oh,
especially with it, in archaeology and Egyptology, because of the idea that, I mean, one of the ideas of you're proposing here, there's many, not just as a water pump, when you're talking about, there's be hydrogen gas, I've heard, would be produced inside of the pyramid, or that it's a power plant, that it could actually provide electricity. It could change the whole idea what civilization was in the past, and it could change our civilization now. Correct? I mean, if we discovered this ancient technology that changes our perception of how we can produce energy, that could be a big threat to some very powerful industries.
Oh, that is true. That's very true. Anything that is against truth is insidious, I think. And truth is something that stands on its own merit. But yes, I've started a nonprofit foundation here in Oregon that is dedicated to understanding how and why the Great Pyramid was built, but also to redevelop that ancient, non-polluting, energy-efficient technology for our modern but very troubled world. So our website talks about our mission statement, what we're doing, and that type of thing. So that's at thepump.org. So yes, we want to have an alternative to nuclear power, hydroelectric dams, fossil fuel powered electrical generating devices, and all of that. So we're trying to be humanitarian, environmentally friendly. It's certainly hard to get the word out, and funding has been a struggle because it's.
Are you trying to reproduce this technology on a small scale?
Yes, that's an excellent question. We have a facility here at our research center with some tooling, materials. We've made some components and sub-assemblies. In effect, it's just what we're doing is using like PVC pipe and polypropylene containers, some customized valves, and that type of thing to recreate this water pumping system. It has to be fairly large, about 1/10 the size of the Great Pyramid. So it'd be a couple stories tall, but that's
still got to be pretty big.
Yeah, that's the most what would you call it? Funding intensive aspect of our research. But much of what we're doing is like reading books and doing some magazine articles and that type of thing. But the construction project and the research and development is a little bit more expensive. So, but we're making slow progress every day.
But your intent is to try to build this kind of smaller scale water pump and prove that it can do what you think the pyramid did, thousands of years ago.
Right. Yes. And pump water in an efficient manner. We think that you mentioned hydrogen, that hydrogen and oxygen were separated from the water inside the Grand Gallery, and ultimately those gases were ignited, which produced, believe it or not, this is real, a vacuum, and that vacuum lifted the water in the Grand Gallery up, and it was like a large water piston, and then that vacuum was released and allowed that piston to come down and push water into the Queen's chamber, and then through the King's chamber and out the King's chamber vents.
And then it would funnel it out to other sources for irrigation and that?
Yeah, we think that it was moved from there to the point of use. The vents had continued down through the casing stones, if you will. The casing stones are gone, and we think the water then was delivered to various points of use, either irrigation or to make compressed air or whatever. We see the Giza Plateau as an industrial site, a science center, much more than a graveyard.
It looks industrial from above, from the sides. It looks like could be some kind of alien industrial plant. you know.
Right. In the Valley of the Nile, most everything has got writing all over it, and it's ornamental with columns and statuary. But the Great Pyramid is starkly ultra modern, yet it's from distant antiquity. So it is certainly like a opart, an out of place artifact, but it's still there. So we're trying to understand the motivation for building it and how it actually helped the people that built it, and that same technology to help our modern but troubled world. My second DVD documentary describes the process that it was used to pump water through the Great Pyramid. It's quite involved, and also how that was done with a lot of computer generated animations. So people can get that from Amazon, and also my second book. Both of those are about why the Great Pyramid was built. They complement each other.
Well, that picture of your DVD there with the other one you showed, you show it sitting like on a body of water, and Herodotus described it like it was an island.
Yes. And some people say, oh, well, that's a metaphor. Whatever. Well, that's up to scholarly debate.
I don't think they were 2,500 years ago. They weren't very metaphorical like that. I think they got straight to the point. And that happens a lot in archaeology. They want to say, oh, it was a metaphor for that. No, I think people talk pretty straight. I think people describe what they were seeing in the best way they could.
I do. I do think that they did. And so it's but it's it's a real thing. It's the Great Pyramid, and it's not mythology or anything else. And to understand it, I think, because it's a technical structure, you don't need to know the name of the pharaoh that built it. You don't need to know when it was built, and you don't need to know the language or the even the religion. Their gods didn't build it. So you don't need to know all these things. So you can peel away all the misconception and all the noise about the Great Pyramid and just
well, are there hieroglyphics that say this pharaoh built this?
Oh, no.
Built this pyramid.
No.
Exactly.
No. Yeah, it's just.
You think? Something that great, somebody's going to say, "I made this."
You would think. But in the relieving chambers above the king's chamber, there are some cartouches that indicate a particular pharaoh made it, but
were those added later?
Well, they were discovered in 1837, I believe, by Howard Weiss. He used black powder to blast into these chambers that weren't accessible, and that's where the quarry marks were found. And these cartouches, but a lot of people think that those cartouches were forgeries that he forged,
right,
to get additional funding. So that's not enough evidence to really.
That's what I've heard about it, that they're forgeries, that they're not even. That's the only writing in there is probably most likely a forgery, which is awful. Shame on him.
Yeah,
for doing that. I mean, you're screwing up history we're trying to discover just so you can get some funding. That's awful. To think about that. Our history could be written by one jerk that wants to get his next grant.
Well, it's a concerted effort with a whole entire science that doesn't even acknowledge that Baghdad batteries are actually Baghdad batteries.
Right. Oh yeah, we haven't gotten that. They did electroplating too with those. Yeah.
And there are ancient artifacts that are electroplated, but.
Do you think they used electricity? Because I mean, there's the light bulb thing too. That they had light bulbs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some hieroglyphs that indicate or look like to us light bulbs, but Egyptologists say, "Oh no, it's a religious or."
Well, how did they go into the dark?
Or whatever. So there's a lot of scholarly debate about what hieroglyphs actually say. So
if you go into the Great Pyramid, into deeper parts of it, the oxygen levels I've heard, or is this true, that you can't even get a flame to work? Like it's not reliable to go down there with a torch.
The Great Pyramid has the subterranean chamber that's about 100 feet below the surface of the bedrock under the base of the Great Pyramid. But people go down there, and in the Roman times, people would use candles and use that to mark graffiti, their names or whatever on the walls and ceiling. So yeah, you can use candles.
You could use, because that's one of the things I was wondering, you know, how they were lighting while they're working down there using candles and stuff.
Yeah,
Suck if your candle light went out.
Yeah, some of the elaborate tombs, which are not associated with the Great Pyramid,
right,
have writing, but the tombs are way deep, holes in the ground, and you can use you can't really use candlelight,
right,
because there's not much soot on the ceilings. And how did they see? So that was the
question. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, how did they see back there to do all the writing? So yeah, I think ancient history, especially in the Valley of the Nile, is certainly much different than what Egyptologists have come up with in so many ways.
Now, what are the differences between the Great Pyramid and then the other two smaller pyramids? What's the differences between those three?
Well, the Great Pyramid is certainly the largest,
size,
most elaborate in its passages and chambers inside, and it has a lot of attention by researchers. The pyramid next to the Great Pyramid is a little bit smaller, and it doesn't have, as far as we know, hardly any passages or chambers. It has just a pretty simple chamber inside of it. And then the third one, Makari's pyramid, is who it's attributed to. It's much smaller, and its construction and workmanship is much more primitive. So,
they were built later on.
That's what they say, but certainly the sequence of pyramid construction is under scholarly debate. Certainly, there's no feature specific to the Great Pyramid that even indicates the builders of the Great Pyramid had any intended any relationship between the Great Pyramid and the pyramid next to it.
Well, so, we're going to be going to commercial break in about 5 minutes here, but we'll kind of lead off into this a little bit.
But so those pyramids could have been built thousands of years apart by different civilizations. So there's nothing to indicate they were all built by the same bunch of people.
Well, this is where I'm getting at. So, you have this pyramid. It could have been there 10,000 years ago, fueling a society we don't know nothing about, that's long gone, that built this. And it's a power station, it's a water pump, it's fueling all that. If one day it stopped working for some reason, we can get into that when we come back from commercial break, maybe why it stopped working. But if it did stop working, I'm sure later on, civilizations that ended up using after maybe a fall or a collapse of civilization, this thing was still working. People were using it, like, oh my God, and then it stopped.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do? Well, it's a pyramid. If we build another one, maybe it'll do the same thing without any understanding of how it worked.
Oh, certainly. That's been done with cargo cults during World War II.
Right.
Isolated civilizations saw, big ships come, and they all had cargo. They had food, radios, and everything, and
technology they didn't understand.
Yeah, and then so they built airplanes out of palm leaves and radios.
Yeah,
out of
they made gods out of them.
And yeah, it's part of their religion. Cargo cults are actually a growing religion in the South Sea Islands, and it's
the pirates too.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept. Some say that the Great Pyramid was infrastructure, but the other pyramids were just examples of a cargo cult. The first pharaoh said, "Oh yeah," an early pharaoh said, "Yeah, that's my pyramid. I'll take credit for it." That's how politicians are. Then the next pharaoh says, "Well, I want one of them." So they make one that's much more primitive, but it's ceremonial.
Well, I picture in my mind this, the pharaoh, the civilizations class. People are like, we remember when this pyramid used to bring prosperity, the prosperity machine. And a pharaoh comes along, I'm going to build a new one right next to the old one, and it'll work. And he's goes this construction guy, just build a pyramid, maybe it'll work. Just if it's the same shape, it'll work, right? It'll work, right? Because they have no understanding of what this thing was doing, how it was doing it.
Right.
They lost that knowledge, and how they lost that knowledge is it was really fascinating. Like what civilization that built this? How did they collapse? Why did they disappear? And then Egypt, as they grew up around it as a civilization, tried to copy it, for many thousands of years later to try to bring back that age or that technology.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. You can't get Egyptologists to consider that, though.
Well, they can't even consider the lock system.
No,
for just building it. And that to me, that there's nothing that sounds very controversial about your idea about how it was built. It doesn't seem far out there. It doesn't seem like you're breaking any major,
laws of physics
at all. It seems very logical. And for them to hold on to this idea that of ramps and all these pulleys and not even consider it just shows that there's something majorly wrong with our universities, with our academia in this.
It is. Let's say.
And how much more are they hiding from us?
Right. Let's say somebody gets a degree in Egyptology from the Boston University, and then the next guy gets a degree in medicine or whatever, or let's say geology. Well, I think that their degrees have a shadow on them because the same university will give a degree for Egyptologists. It's just strange. We're just in a time of transition, and it's going to take a generation. And pretty
wait for some people to die.
Yeah, people are going to say people believed in Egyptology and they believed in phrenology. So
and Scientology, I don't.
Yeah, it's just part of the way it works. Science isn't just a unbiased endeavor at all. So. We'll see how it goes, but the interest is very high in this direction of research to actually understand how stones were moved from point A to point B. And
well, I think that's why there's 14, 15 seasons of Ancient Aliens, because people have been or like, okay, something's different. Something's not right with all this stuff I learned in grade school and high school. And, this none of this is adding up. People have questions and there's awakening, I think, an awareness that our past is not what we've been told. And it's why we have you do these shows. And it's why I have you on as a guest, because I've always been fascinated with this. And I think there's so many more questions we need to ask. We'll come back and ask those questions after this commercial break. And you can call in and ask your own questions. I'll give out those phone lines when we come back. All right, guys, our guest, Stephen Myers, the Pyramid Water Pump. We'll be more when we come back.
When Alex Gardner is asleep, he has an extraordinary gift. The government wants it, the scientists want it, but to keep it may cost him his life. It might be better if Alex didn't sleep at all, but he cannot resist entering the dreamscape. Can you? See Dreamscape in the West End and all over London now. Certificate 15. It takes an extraordinary adventurer to enter the Dreamscape.
Knights of the Road, here's your stallion. The car for freedom. The car for hot excitement. The car for a man who is alone against the elements.
Matsu Thunder.
The pride is back. It's the power of a compact.
It looks small, but it's so big.
Fuel injected.
Inject me.
My Matsu Thunder. On the toll road of life, you have to pay to prove you can. Live the emotion of an individual.
Thunder.
The awesome power of nature distilled into one vehicle.
Wow.
Because after you get struck by lightning, there's thunder.
The Maibatsu Thunder.
Tired of school?
Who was Joan of Arc?
Noah's wife? Like to travel?
Let's go back into history. Let's reach out and touch someone.
Want to meet people in the past?
Put them in the Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden? Excellent! Execute them. Otis.
Then hitch a ride with George Carlin, Keanu Reeves, and Alex Winter in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure from Orion Pictures.
Hi, Jill. What are you making?
I'm making average noodles for my kids.
What are they like?
They're distinctly average. This one is broccoli flavour.
That is very average. I could barely raise any extreme enthusiasm for those whatsoever.
You should try their other flavours like carrot, plain fish and potato.
Are they quick to prepare?
Compared to other noodles, you mean?
Yes.
They're pretty average, actually.
Well, I might just possibly go and maybe buy some sometime in a bit, perhaps.
Yes, I'm sure your whole family will be mildly interested in average noodles.
Average noodles, they're okay, just nothing special.
Hi, Jill! What are you making?
I'm making super noodles!
For your kids?
Stuff that for me!
What flavour are they?
They're magnificent mild curry! Oh, they are super! Wait till you try their other flavours, like sudden fried chicken, barbecue beef and cheese and ham.
Wow, Jill, this has changed my life! Now I really appreciate the meaning of the word super as an adjective. Mummy, can we have some?
Yes! In fact, let's invite the whole street round for tea! Yeah!
Fabulous super noodles, not named super for nothing.
The first time was only a warning. Damien, Omen 2. Now showing at the Leicester Square Theatre. Certificate X. Available in paperback from Futura Books.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
The answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is $42.
42?
Yes, I thought it over quite thoroughly. It is, it's 42. It would have been simpler, of course, to have known what the actual question was.
But it was the question. The ultimate question. Of everything.
That's not a question. Only when you know the question will you know what the answer means.
Tonight, our guest is Stephen Myers. He's the author of Lost Technologies of the Great Pyramid and the Great Pyramid Prosperity Machine. It's an honor to have him on tonight to talk about the ancient mysteries, ancient technology of the Great Pyramids. I've always been interested in the pyramids. Of course, I, as a kid, fascinated about how did the aliens build it. But I mean, I do believe people could have built it. The lock system that he described seems like a very reasonable explanation, a lot more than what I was told as a kid how the pyramids were built. It's fascinating to think of, but also what kind of civilization built something like that? I don't believe the Egyptians did. Maybe the ancient Egyptians, way back farther than we could think of it. Some other civilization, though. I've always been fascinated by the idea that there was some pre-technologically advanced civilization before anybody knows in history, going back before Sumeria, 10,000, 15,000 years ago. Humankind could have been like us. And then something happened. You ever seen life after people? You see the stuff that's left behind? Not a lot. Not a lot of things get left behind. A lot of things don't make it through time. But the pyramids were built to last, obviously. And they're a testament that it's something. It's a big question mark on Earth. Where did we come from? Have we done this all before? These are the questions we're going to be getting into tonight. And if you got questions tonight, you can call in. The phone lines are open, all of them. You can call in at 219-230-4444. That's 219-230-4444. Or call in at 260-225-9419. We also have the two Skype lines open. Call in J Bland OO or J Bland Paranormal Soup. Those two Skype lines are open. If you call in and you hear us talking, just wait till we call on you. Or if I hang up on you, don't take offense. Just try calling back in because I got somebody else on the line. But let's go ahead and get back to our guest. Welcome back, Stephen. Now, you heard me talk about, have you ever seen Life After People? Oh, shoot. Hold on 1 second. Sarah, I remember I got to unmute you. That's me that did it. Sorry, Stephen. There you go.
Yes, I have. It's a wonderful series, quite thought-provoking. Well,
One of the things I've always thought about when I watch Life After People, there was an episode about the Hoover Dam, how long that would last, these things, what would another civilization after us think, what would be left? Well, that's what I always wondered about the Great Pyramid. That was built to last. Everything else around it that they could have used, wiring, anything like that, it's all degradable. It's all stuff that would fall apart after thousands and thousands of years. So we have no idea the accessories that went with the pyramid. We don't have the machines they were using to power with that. We don't. All that stuff's gone.
Oh yeah, certainly. I collect antique gasoline engines, and you find them in barns and stuff. And some of my buddies that collect them as well. If you get a find, they always say, "Did you find it before the brass thieves got a hold of it?" Because there's brass items that they take. And certainly, when the Great Pyramid was decommissioned or quit working, they probably took items out of it and used it to make fishing lures or other things that were important. And there's
happens now. The abandoned building gets stripped of the copper wiring.
Right on. So
it's money.
That's the nature of artifacts. The Great Pyramid is like a puzzle with many pieces missing. It has long open passages, and there are doors on pivots or sliding stones.
Yeah.
And how does that keep a pharaoh's treasure safe? There's no coherent.
Seems pretty open.
So yeah, it's changed. The Great Pyramid has changed quite a bit from when it was first built till now. So it's we just have to. We all have the same direct physical evidence. Everybody, there's nothing secret, if you will, that we know of, and then we interpret that to try to make sense of this massive structure.
We do have somebody that's called in. I was waiting for his call because he's always got great questions. Is Zach? How you doing tonight, Zach?
I'm doing pretty good, Jason. How you doing, man?
Doing good. Glad you called in.
Hi, Zach.
All right. So, hey, Stephen. I have two questions for you this evening. My first question relates to your use of the scientific method to come up with your conclusion. My question is, what did you use as the experimental group in your experiment, and what was the control group?
Oh, I understand what you're saying. What we're doing is we are attempting to recreate this ancient technology to provide a demonstration of this unique water pumping system. And that would both be beneficial for our modern world, but also it would be a demonstration to show how the Great Pyramid itself worked. But what I'm looking at is the lack of any type of demonstration associated with the science of the Egyptology. So that's why
the control group is the Egyptologists that have done nothing to prove it.
Yeah, they haven't moved a 70-ton stone 1 inch in 200 years. So that's the control. That in itself is an indicator that the method that they say in their books how the stones were moved is incorrect.
Okay. And then my second question is related to early Islamic civilization that developed after that. I mean, it really was a double-edged sword when I was in college and I was learning this, because it's described in the Quran, for example, that when the Prophet Muhammad and his army, when they arrived in Mecca, they destroyed all these religious icons, and throughout history they would do the same thing as well. But at the same side of the coin, they would also preserve a lot of works and even made many different advances, like in the area of medicine for the time. So my second question is, did many scholars at this time, they maybe understand really the purpose of why these pyramids were constructed? Is that why they're still in place today? Why or why not?
I think the pyramids are in place today because it takes too much effort to tear them down.
True. They took what they needed and got out of town.
You know, they're quarries. You know, in the Middle Ages, in Cairo, there was a earthquake anywhere between 1000 AD and 1300 AD, and they used the precisely cut casing stones, which were high quality stone, as to help rebuild Cairo. Or not, yeah, Cairo. So they were quarries, but it just there's not a big enough return on investment to remove or destroy the pyramids. That's why they still exist. You know, it'd be a lot of work to destroy the Hoover Dam, you know, by hand,
right,
with bronze chisels. So,
and what are you going to get out of it?
What ancient people knew or didn't knew is under scholarly debate. Certainly, there were some brilliant people in the Islamic world during the Middle Ages, and you know, some information is lost. You know, some information was preserved, different books and things. Certainly, in Alexandria, you know, the library was burned, and the Vatican has a whole library that is inaccessible. So,
and they burn many books themselves.
Yeah, what people do is under scholarly debate.
All right, awesome. Well, those are all the questions that I had. Thank you, Stephen, for answering those. I love hearing everything that you're saying, man. I can't wait to hear more.
Thanks for calling in, Zach.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
You too, bud. You know, they took the what do you call them, the setting stones, whatever. You know, a lot of that they found later in Egypt was repurposed. Right, they took those pieces, but you know, it does. You know, there is the idea. I mean, a lot of ancient, you know, religion or ancient mysticism religions. You know, or I wouldn't say ancient. No, I shouldn't say ancient. More modern mysticism religions really focus on the pyramids, like as spiritual places and have some divine meaning or religious thing. And there's a fear, especially nowadays. You know, you see all the Buddhist temples that, you know, Islam has destroyed in like Afghanistan, and that what they could do if they got, you know, decided, you know, let's just blow those up because it offends Muhammad or something. You know, we could, you know, we are lucky that nobody had a stick up their butt and hated the pyramids, decided, oh, they're an eyesore, they're against my God, and tore them down.
Well, certainly. One thing about ISIS is that they are interested in purity of religion. You know, there's a lot of Christian churches that need a little bit of that with their pagan Christmas trees right in their churches and everything else. But ISIS is interested in purity of religion.
Right.
And when they see people use a structure or a statue for what they consider pagan religions, then they destroy them, you know. So they see people, you know, go in the Great Pyramid and hum or chant or contemplate their navel or, you know, smoke pot or whatever they do for a religious purpose. I think that it does put the Great Pyramid in jeopardy for because of these fanatics.
Yeah, I mean, all it takes is one guy on a tour going in there and boom.
Yeah, you know, I know. So if people would just say, "Oh yeah, that was like an ancient infrastructure, you know, like a hydroelectric dam or something," then ISIS would have no real reason to blow it up. But it's
well, we would hope.
We would hope. So,
of course, if that it was proven that it was an ancient structure that rewrote all what we know about civilization, including their religion, that might change. That might change their minds too. You know, that's a possibility.
Yeah, and if it finds out that it proves the Great Pyramid proves Egyptology to be wrong, then who knows?
They might blow it up.
What they'll do.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing to see here. It's gone. No proof. Well, you know, speaking of, you know, they are doing things like we talked about in the World Wide Web of Weird is this scan finding this extra chamber. What would be the extra chamber? Do you have any? I mean, have you put that into your concept, your model? I mean, you don't have the whole picture of what is inside that pyramid. You know, could that extra chamber, you know, mean something more to your theory?
Yeah, it could. it's interesting. The Great Pyramid is, this ancient structure, but yet it's in the news quite often. So there's certainly a lot of interest in the Great Pyramid, to say the least. But yeah, there are some very contemporary scans that have been produced by the Pyramid Scan Project.
Right.
And they use various modern techniques, and they've come up with the large void, but there's also a void above the original entrance.
There's like another. Is it like another tunnel or something?
Yeah, or something. But I'm with you. We talked earlier, and the scan. There is scholarly debate as to its accuracy, if you will.
Right.
And it's tantalizing information, and it makes for some nice articles to read. But the scan produces data that is interpreted, and then they come up with something. But that doesn't mean that it's there. They've been scanning the Great Pyramid since the 1970s with various scans. The most prominent scan before this current one it produced a fuzzy picture, if you will, that proved there was an internal spiral ramp, and that theory got a lot of traction even from Egyptologists, because it depicts the builders as strong-backed knuckle draggers with this internal spiral ramp.
It fit their narrative.
Yeah, that's their narrative. Yet this new scan doesn't. This new series of scans doesn't detect the internal spiral ramp. So that's interesting to me, because the internal spiral ramp was a competing theory to this water.
You would need it there. You would need it there to do what they say they had to do. They would have proved their narrative if it was there.
Right. But the new scan indicates that it's not there. It wasn't detected. So, and the scan before the one that detected the internal spiral ramp didn't detect this great big void. So I'm withholding judgment until we find out more. And like you say, drill a hole and put a little camera up through there.
Or drone or something. There's got to be some way to get in there.
Yeah, do something. I mean, they've drilled holes in the Sphinx.
They used to blow it up. You talk about, they used to take dynamite in there. I mean, what's stopping them now?
Black powder, actually. Invented till later. But yeah, they would use black powder. Flanders Petrie, when he was measuring, he'd take a screwdriver and pound it into the stone so he could hold one end of his measuring tape. So, but yeah, if whoever paid the money for the scan, they can pay more money and get a hole drilled. And everything takes time, and there's permits and hands to be greased and all of that.
We still haven't gotten to the under the paw of the Sphinx.
No, we haven't got to that. Nobody put up enough money yet. But the Great Pyramid now is used to provide prosperity for the people around it. Tour guides and Egyptologists and Zooey Hawass, and everyone has to pay a fee, and so it's a money generating machine now. But
they don't want to shut it down to do some major discovery.
Yeah, in ancient times it was a prosperity generating machine. But yeah, so research is ongoing. Isn't that amazing? Nothing's settled about the Great Pyramid. Everything's under scholarly debate except its location.
So if you were able to get the, you get the funding, how would this work for what you would build? Like, what are the mechanisms? Like, what would it do? What would your water pump provide?
Well, we would duplicate the passages and chambers of the Great Pyramid to scale, but use PVC pipe polypropylene containers, and it would probably be the prototype would be quite large. Just like Diesel's first diesel engine wasn't small. It wasn't a tabletop model. He built it at a scale that would actually work, and then it was refined and perfected. In 100 years later, they make smaller diesel engines. But his was like 12 feet long. So But
it's like the first computers took up whole rooms, you know?
Yeah, it's like that. So we're going to, it's just make the passages and chambers and, separate the hydrogen and oxygen to make the hydrogen, that other researchers say was in the Great Pyramid as it worked as a machine. Christopher Dunn contends that there was hydrogen and oxygen.
What wasn't it? He's saying, wasn't there another chemical that they believe was mixed in there?
Too? Christopher Dunn and others have various ideas, that it was the hydrogen was produced chemically. Myself, right. I think it was produced using electrolysis in the Grand Gallery, and that's what produced the salts that's in the lower end of the Grand Gallery, and most notably the Queen's Chamber. It's a result of deposits on the walls.
So that's physical evidence right there that collaborates your theory. Is that there would be there's the chemical, well, I don't remember what it was, a magnesium, or I can't remember what it was, the chemicals that they said there were traces of inside.
Well, there's several varying results from different analysis. Much of those salts have been removed, in this last 100 years for cosmetic purposes to make the
but that's evidence.
I know. Yeah. Hey, that's the way, it's all about paying customers, I guess,
but not a single scientist or single person would say, hey, this might be important. This might mean something. Why is this here?
No, they said, remove that graffiti and that deposits on there and we'll make it pretty for the tourists.
But not one scientific mind would go, why is it here? Why did this end up here? Why did these salts end up here? Why did these chemicals end up here?
There was one person. Here, let me move one person. Let me get another book. Much of my research is based on another book that was originally published in 1962, called Pharaoh's Pump, written by Edward Kunkel. It was privately published, and he talked about the water locks and the water pump thing. It's privately published, out of print. The only way you can get it is interlibrary loan, several editions. But our foundation is based on, is named after the title of the book written by Edward.
Right.
And he said, well, what are those salts for? And he asked a lot of other questions about the direct physical evidence, and came up with a theory that the Great Pyramid operated as a water pump. And that was 1962, and the idea is still trying to get out there, if you will. That's what we're doing, is trying to educate people. But that's over 50 years, and certainly this direction of research has been advanced quite a bit since then, and resulting in both 2 documentaries and 2 books. So yeah. There's other researchers that asked about that.
It seems like a lot of common sense, a lot of common questions that should have been asked a long time ago. But hold on, we do got another person on the phone line here. We got 386 area code. Who do we got?
Jamie, Rob, and Stephen. This is Debbie.
Hi, Debbie. Thanks for calling in.
Hello. I have a couple of questions regarding some theories that I've heard around the pyramid. The first one was that it was like a huge wireless energy station, and the top of the pyramid was covered in some type of gold on the outside. Have the scans showed any of that to be true?
Yeah, there's a lot of theories that the Great Pyramid somehow phoned home to ET by generating energy out through the vents and whatever. But no, there's no evidence for a capstone that was made of gold or that did anything. And certainly someone asked about the scientific method and demonstrations. There's no demonstration that would indicate the Great Pyramid was used to somehow be a wireless generator or anything like that. People associate the Great Pyramid with pyramids around the globe, but they're all built with varying degrees of construction quality, varying design. So some people say, oh yeah, it's a wireless worldwide system, but that doesn't, when you get to the brass tacks, that's hard to really to justify, how that's done. So
I think some of that comes from like the Tesla's wireless transmission of energy experiments. A lot of people wonder if that's connected.
Yeah, well, what's connected is there's a whole bunch of memes on Facebook that show the Great Pyramid and Tesla. But the reality is Tesla never spoke or wrote about the Great Pyramid. So
you think he would have been on that, if there was a connection?
Yeah,
All right,
smart
Debbie.
as he is and on and on and on, you'd think he would have been on that. But his tower that he made, there's people compare that with the Great Pyramid, but they're more different than they are similar, to say the least. So I don't think the Great Pyramid was like a wireless energy of some sort. And and I don't know the return on investment for that. Maybe communication.
If they didn't have anything to power it with, who knows? What's your next question, Debbie?
Next theory was that the size of the stones, they were wondering how they were moved into place, and the theory that I had heard was they were moved using sound frequency.
Yeah, we talked about that.
I've heard that too. I've seen YouTube videos where they move a grain of sand or even a water drop with sound waves or whatever. But in the real world, that's where the Great Pyramid is. I don't think that they move 70-ton payloads with sound waves or a magic wand. The Panama Canal was recently expanded. And it could cost millions, billions to expand the Panama Canal to move our heaviest objects. Why didn't they just use sound waves to move them?
Water's been around forever.
Yeah, because it's real people. The engineers are real people that really have to produce results instead of like Egyptologists or whatever. So, I do think that they did not use sound waves to move these heavy objects, and there is a lack of evidence in that regard.
Okay, and the final question was the large stone, I guess, boxes, I don't know what else to call them, that they originally thought were sarcophagus or sarcophagi. There's been some theories about those, that they were used placing large crystals in it, and with the water flowing underneath the pyramid, that in combination with the crystals that were used in the boxes, that was some way a producer of the energy that was purportedly being transmitted wirelessly throughout the valley from the pyramids. Has there been anything said about those boxes or what they were used for? Because it wasn't a tomb, so. Yes,
there are some boxes. We call them boxes, but they're huge, and they are made of, I believe, granite. But what's remarkable about them is that they have ultra high precision stone cutting inside corners and large surfaces that are as precise as what they call surface plates in a machining, where they measure things. It's like a precision cut. I mean, it's incomprehensible, the precision, and they're very large scale, extreme precision. But those boxes, they thought, they put bulls in them, and for mummies, and there's a whole bunch of other ideas, and there's a number of them, but they're not associated with the Great Pyramid, so it's not the focus of my research. But
they are interesting.
They are interesting, and I want to thank her for those wonderful questions. They are very interesting, and I can tell you this: they weren't made by hand using copper chisels. It can't be done.
Right.
And they are an enigma, certainly, and they are remarkable in every way. Have nothing to do with a Stone Age culture or knuckle draggers. some geniuses made those for a purpose that was justified. The return on investment was bigger than the cost of building it. So what that return on investment was is hard to say.
Well, I've seen some other pyramids and other structures in Central and South America that had the same type of precision cutting. They said there is not even a tool that we have in our technology, in our advancement today, that could make the precise cut that those stones were made in and put into place in the exact perfect position. So, it leads me to believe that there was, previously, before, our time, there was some form of alien or otherworldly technology that we don't currently have knowledge of. And probably, that played a role in movement of the large stones as well as cutting of the large stones. And we just lost all history of it and still haven't caught back up to it yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
In South America, there is some remarkable stone cutting and large stones that were moved and set in place with extreme precision. And how a lot of that was done is under scholarly debate. But again, not back muscles and
not chisels.
It was done by geniuses, but not necessarily aliens. If you think aliens did that or built the Great Pyramid, you're also saying that ancient people couldn't do it. So, those two things go together.
But an alien influence could be involved.
It could be.
And I'm not necessarily
sort of an influence, but again, that's who built the Great Pyramid, not how. So
go ahead, Debbie.
Right. Well, I'm not saying that it was definitely aliens, and I'm also not saying that humans didn't build it, but we could be, seeded from another planet, that
right.
Maybe, what we were taught, because we're finding out a lot of what we were taught through history or religion is not,
isn't adding up.
So maybe there were people, which we now call humans, originally came from another planet with greater technology than we now possess.
Yeah.
And, it's what we call humans now, but maybe they originally came from another place. That's all. I reserve judgment on it. I don't know the answers. I'm just saying that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
And, I find it fascinating, and I'm curious about all different theories and how we lost the knowledge along the way, how we lost the knowledge of all this technology that obviously earlier humans or other species, whoever they were, possessed at one point in order to build those. And how did we lose it? Right. And will we back up to it? That it just fascinates me, and it's something I've always.
Oh yeah, I agree. It is very fascinating. Certainly, ancient people were geniuses and not primitive in any way. So. But it's the honor and duty of modern day researchers to try to understand what happened in distant antiquity around the globe. But again, sciences like Egyptology and even anthropology and archaeology aren't doing enough to really find out the truth about ancient mankind. So hopefully people like you and myself, the people in doing this show, will help shed some light on what actually happened in distant antiquity.
Well, thank you for calling in, Debbie.
You're welcome. And I think we are getting there. I think that science and spirituality are finally starting to come a little bit closer together and recognize each other's contributions, and hopefully they will start working together more and more to find out the truth.
We can always hope.
Yeah, we're in a revolution, and I think that's going to happen.
Yep. Well, thanks, Debbie. You have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
You talk about the other pyramids, like, in South America, and of course, I've seen ancient aliens are like, they're showing these things, or they're like, this is a pyramid. I'm like, no, that's a mountain. but but the ones that are pyramids, it seems like maybe these other civilizations were trying to mimic something from our ancient past, an ancient civilization that's long gone. Like, I point to Atlantis, there's the Luminaire, or, there's other ancient, mythology of other civilizations that were highly advanced, that maybe that, just like the Egyptians did, mimicking right next door to the Great Pyramid, they try to mimic it a couple more times to try to get it to work. Imagine building all that and finding out, okay, it's not pumping any water. we made it look the same. It's the same shape. Do we need to make it bigger or smaller? They were all trying to mimic this technology without any understanding of what the technology was, because it was all gone. It's from a civilization long gone.
Well, right. Pyramid shape is a obvious answer to make a tall building when you just have masonry. We have I-beams and steel, so we make tall, skinny structures like the Eiffel Tower or skyscrapers, that type of thing. But if you just have masonry, you make a large base, and work your way up to the top. A lot of the pyramids in South America have platforms on them and may have been used purposefully for societal or religious purposes. So who's to say?
So maybe they were mimicking an ancient power plant.
Yes.
That's what, it was passed down generations by word of mouth and drawings or whatever, that there was this great powerful people. They had these pyramid shaped buildings that did amazing things. So then they do it. They think they're gods and they replicate it.
Yeah, that's the that would be a kind of a cargo cult mentality, and that's certainly a possibility for distant antiquity. I think that's a very high possibility.
I mean, we could all come from this kind of cargo cult mentality. All these different civilizations are the remnants of one major massive technology civilization that's gone, and they're all the remnants now, all mimicking in their own way that ancient technology.
Oh yeah, I can believe that. That's for sure. But we have to again do our due diligence and understand what really happened. So maybe we will find out.
Do you think? We haven't gotten into this. What do you think eventually made the water pump stop for the pyramid? What caused it to stop working?
Well, there's a lot of internal damage inside the Great Pyramid by vandals and looters for the last 4,500 years. And but the structural damage is very little. There's no subsidence. It was built on solid bedrock, not on sand. In the King's Chamber, the ceiling stones are cracked. The 70-ton ceiling stones are cracked. And it also looks like there was some sort of an expansive force inside the King's Chamber. And people have described that as an explosion or whatever. We think that the coffer that's in that chamber was part of a float system that kept that chamber half full of water and half full of air. And then we think that float system broke, and that might have caused the corner of the coffer to break.
And that's it.
We described that in my book and all that. But that caused the King's Chamber to fill completely full of water, and then it was hydraulic, if you will. That's actually a real term. And it expanded and damaged that chamber beyond repair. So that's why it stopped working.
And when do you think that could have happened? Could that happen? You said so. It shows looting going back to 4,500 years ago. There's evidence that they were looting at 4,500 years. Could that have been when it stopped working? Because they say it's as old.
Yeah, possibly. But it could have been. It could have been operating for quite a few years, and then have that internal malfunction. So that's a possibility. But then. It could have been inaccessible to get inside for quite a few, 1,000 years. And then somebody finally got inside and then started to do the damage caused by the hands of man.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And they might have started looting it once it stopped working. And then that's like, well, this thing's just a pile of rocks to us now. It doesn't give us any water. It doesn't. I mean, one of the things that you talk about, the hydroelectric. There's also static electricity you could cause from this too. I'm sure there's different ways you could have gotten power out of the mechanisms in there. There's a lot of different ways with water to get energy.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things that could have been used for, but the water pump in itself for irrigation, if once that shut down, that it would have been probably some chaos. The initial
certainly
in society.
It probably happened during a catastrophe, and there was chaos unending, including the destruction of the infrastructure. There are some large excavations around the Great Pyramid, including boat pits and also some large square deep excavations. We think some machinery was in those excavations that was powered by the Great Pyramid. And one of the proposed purposes of that machinery is to create compressed air, but also static electricity, which has a lot of valuable uses, believe it or not. So, yeah,
electroplating.
It's amazing. Yeah, electroplating. It's amazing. The various purposes could be medical purposes. They could also, with compressed air, create very high temperatures and low temperatures with a vortex
cooling,
and use those high temperatures and low temperatures for medical purposes, and even who knows what, 1,000 reasons.
Well, you're in the desert. If you can make air conditioning, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a joke, but you'd be surprised.
I mean, for agriculture, they could have used it, for controlling temperature or and heating for what kind of heating, how hot would they be able to get it? I mean, we're talking like furnace.
Very hot, enough to possibly temper metal or do medical purposes. But people can word search vortex tube, and they can also make a freezing temperature with one of those tubes. It's just it has no moving parts, and it's just a tube that goes in a spiral, and ultimately one end becomes very hot, the other end very cold. So I mean, there's a lot of industrial and scientific purposes that the pumped water could have been used for, and of course I discuss that in my books and documentaries.
Don't forget, people can call in 219-230-4444, 260-225-9419. Skype IDs JBland 00 and JBland Paranormal Soup. Those are the Skype IDs. Phone lines are still open. You can call in before we go to commercial break too. But you have to wonder too, if they try to mimic that Great Pyramid with the smaller pyramids, after spending all that time building that like the second pyramid, and it didn't work.
The pyramids became smaller. The quality of workmanship became worse, and they were repurposed for like religious or societal or status purposes. But that has nothing to do really with the original purpose of the Great Pyramid.
Well, there's aspects and times in the Egyptian history where they had famines and low birth rates and different times where it seemed like the Egyptian society went up and down quite a bit. Do you think any of those times, like 4,500 years ago, was there a dip in their society? If this thing shut down, it would have affected everybody there. It would have affected agriculture. It would have been chaos.
Certainly. The Grand Coulee Dam in Washington State makes enough electricity to power 6 cities the size of Seattle. So, if the infrastructure goes haywire, the society will collapse. But the Egyptologists talk about several periods of what do they call it? Periods of confusion or whatever, chaos, and that's possible. But again, the Great Pyramid could have been built much earlier than those.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it was around like for 10,000 years, okay, and then 4,500 years ago, that's when it shut down. There would be a deep impact because these people have been living off of this prosperity machine for all this time. Their society and civilization's built around it. They don't know how to maintain it or keep it up. And an earthquake happens or an explosion happens. And now this thing doesn't work.
Yeah.
And everything you've based your lives around is now in total chaos. How are we going to get our water to our irrigation system and, feed people?
Yeah, it would be chaos. It would be horrific, when they had the gas shortages in the 1970s. I remember that, and if you don't have gasoline, you don't get to work, or when they have an earthquake and the roads are all out of
whack. You would think there'd be some writing about that in the hieroglyphics about like a famine or a time, a period like that, and why that, they pointing at the pyramid and it don't work, or something.
Well, yeah, what the hieroglyphs say is certainly up to scholarly debate. I don't necessarily believe what Egyptologists say. Certainly, there's some writing in the Bible about famines in the Middle East. So, I bet there were famines. Some were caused either by plagues or I would say infrastructure failure or various other reasons. But we love us in the first world love our infrastructure. We're inundated by prosperity, and then that's why people say, "Oh no, those Egyptians they didn't need prosperity. They didn't want their kids to eat every day." But no, modern times they have prosperity from the High Aswan Dam. In ancient times, they have prosperity from the Great Pyramid.
I mean, have they even found evidence that's, everybody, I think everybody's been influenced, at least up to about my generation. I don't know if anybody else, these kids nowadays don't see any of these movies, but like, the 10 Commandments and seeing the Israelites, slaves and building the pyramids and all that, do you think, has there any evidence to show that slaves were used or that, there would be a massive force of people that had to have been there at a time to build it, at least if they did it 4,500 years ago.
Well, there would have been people, but how many people does it take to move a 70-ton payload? If 70-ton payload can be moved using 1,500 watts. That's 15 100 watt light bulbs. That much energy, I can move a 70-ton payload. Okay. Isn't that interesting?
All right.
What you do is you put a 70-ton payload on a barge like they did in the 1830s and use 2 horses. That's 2 horsepower on a towpath and have a kid lead the horse. So 1 kid, 2 horses can move 70 tons in the 1830s. So, take a couple guys on each water lock, and there you go. It didn't.
And they get it done.
Don't take a massive amount of people. Certainly, there'd be some, making a ditch for a canal and whatever. But no, there's not a massive amount of people. So
that's what I say. That's one of the things I've always thought was lacking is the proof of the amount of people they say that would have been there to construct it. They have not shown that proof that they were there. There'd be a lot of evidence left behind. You'd think.
You would think there are some evidence of where the workers lived near where the Great Pyramid is, but that doesn't tell you how it was done. And also, people always ask about the slaves. They were slaves or they weren't slaves. But the legal status or the citizenship status of the worker doesn't tell you anything.
Took our jobs.
That doesn't tell you nothing. Okay, you know what a cotton gin is? That's a thing that they crank.
Right.
Okay, I've cranked a cotton gin, and I'm a free man, so it has nothing to do with the legal status of my citizenship on how a cotton gin works. So all the questions are just another layer of confusion and misinformation about how the Great Pyramid was assembled.
We got another caller on the Skype line. I think it was Gulab. I don't know. Who do we got on the line?
It's Sarah.
Sarah, thank you for calling in.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Stephen. I have a question for you. I would like your thoughts on the fact these pyramids, they're located all over the globe, and they were built in the past at a time when these different locations on the earth, they had absolutely no way of communicating with each other.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there are pyramids, that were built in ancient times, pyramids in modern times. There's a great big one in Las Vegas, and I think in Memphis there's a big pyramid that was built recently. One down in Los Angeles, and in ancient times. But again, if you want to make a tall structure and all you have is masonry or rubble, it's going to be big at the bottom and little at the top. So it's just an obvious answer to that construction constraint. But there's no real coherent explanation of if they are related in terms of being an energy grid or anything like that. So I think that there is a lot of speculation about that. I don't think that all pyramids serve the same purpose in ancient times or modern times. And they, again, some are made out of rubble and some aren't water pumps. And but you can't really lump them all together. I think that's not a very good research technique, to lump things that are so different together just because they sort of are kind of the same shape, if you will.
Like I brought up before, though, is one of the possibilities is that all these different civilizations are shoot-offs from one major civilization that had this kind of technology, and they were all mimicking from what they could been passed down.
Oh yeah, that's a possibility. It could have been in their DNA or their cultural thing. Through the eons. A lot of pyramids are built over thousands of years apart in terms of time. So they
and we're still building them. Like you pointed at a perfect point, is that we're still building them. We're still mimicking this civilization so many thousands of years later.
Yeah, there's one in San Francisco and a few others. One, believe it or not, in Salt Lake City. That is not big, but it's a big enough. It's several story building, and a guy made a golden pyramid over in Illinois. That area. So there's a lot of interest in pyramids, what they do, and what they're for. So what there needs to be is more research conducted on all of these things. And certainly to transcend the stranglehold that Egyptology has on trying to understand the Great Pyramid.
Well, did you have any other questions?
Yes. Is there any evidence that the older ones were built in alignment with the stars?
The Orion correlation. Here we go.
Okay, that's a great question. There is some ideas there. Okay, let me put it this way. There's no evidence specific to the Great Pyramid, which indicates the original builders intended any relationship between the Great Pyramid and stars. There's no relation. There's no evidence. Okay. What we have is everybody has the same direct physical evidence, like a rock, the stones at the Great Pyramid. I've been there and touched them. That's direct physical evidence, but correlations are not direct physical evidence. A correlation is an interpretation of direct physical evidence. It's up to scholarly debate. Like the location of the Great Pyramid, that's not up to scholarly debate. But the correlations are. They are a mental construct, if you will. 100 years ago, the big correlation theory was the pyramidology, which was the correlations between the Great Pyramid and the Holy Bible. There's a whole bunch of them, the Pyramid Inch, and the Great Pyramid predicted where Jesus was going to be born. And the Great Pyramid was Bible prophecy in stone based on a whole bunch of precise correlations that they come up with. But the problem with pyramidology is that there's no evidence to indicate the original builders intended a relationship between the Great Pyramid and the Bible. And that correlation theory, that biblical correlation theory, is being rejected because these correlations have no causation. There's nothing to indicate the two things are linked. Now on the Great Pyramid, there's vents that point up, but they don't point to Orion because of the precession of the equinoxes. They pointed to hundreds of different stars.
Right. They just say, oh, at this time, in this period, it pointed at Orion. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, that's circular reasoning. When was the Great Pyramid built? Well, when the vents pointed to Orion. Well, why did the vents point to Orion? Because that's the, you know, it's
that's when it was built.
It's circular reasoning. But the Orion correlation theory is a collection of correlations that seemingly have no causation. There's no way to get someone that believes in Great Pyramid correlations to answer this question. Can a Great Pyramid correlation be invalid? I'm asking you that question. Can a precise Great Pyramid correlation be invalid?
Can't validate or invalidate it.
Yeah. I mean, they come up with some numbers that kind of match up, or something points to something, and they say, Shazam! It's a correlation. But it, you know, there's a lot of correlations out there, and the two main categories of correlations are valid and invalid. And in the realm of legitimate academic research, there has to be a third piece of evidence, a relatable causation evidence that validates a relationship between the two things being compared.
Exactly.
There is a very famous correlation between the number of pirates and the global warming. You know, you can look that up. There, you know, they have a chart, and it's very precise. The less pirates, the hotter the Earth gets. And there's you know, that is a.
If you want, you can correlate a lot of things that have nothing to do with each other.
A lot of things, but there's no causation between those two things.
Right.
So, but just as pyramidology was these collection of these correlations between the Great Pyramid and the Bible is being rejected, the Orion correlation theory is faced with that same problem. There's a bunch of correlations, but you know, there's no way to validate them. No, the issue is there's no invalidability of them or whatever. But
there's no way to connect the two.
No way to connect
positive or negatively. We got to go to commercial break. Thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think it's a failed theory, the Orion correlation theory.
Okay, thank you very much for answering my questions.
Have a great night.
You too.
All right, we're going to go to our last commercial break. Phone lines will still be open. You can call in after we get back from the commercial break. Have your questions. I love this discussion. This is something I've always wanted to get into. And then time has been flying by. So we'll be back after the short commercial break. Don't forget, subscribe, follow, like this show. Tell your friends about it. We'll be back.
Intercepted transmission of unknown origin.
Transmission? Out here?
SOS.
Human.
Unknown.
Alien. Certificate X. Exclusive engagement at the Odeon Leicester Square. Now.
Any systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
This is an APAC studio presentation.
Hi, I'm Barry, owner-operator of Barry's Barometer Barn. Lately, I bet you've been lying awake at night asking yourself, how many barometers do I really need? Well, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we think you need more than one. Otherwise, we're going to go out of business. Remember, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we don't know the meaning of high-pressure sales. Come on, folks, buy another barometer. I'm trying to put my kids through college. I've got a family to support and a secret mistress who isn't cheap.
Visit Barry's Barometer Barn, 000 Storm Drive. Come on, folks, buy a barometer. I'm Barry's older brother, Larry, and every time one of you people walk past the store without coming in, Barry beats me.
This has been a presentation from Tim Morgan's APAC Studio. For more almost professional amateur comic studio content, visit the APAC YouTube channel. Search APAC 2002. That's APAC 2002 on YouTube.
Of the second kind, physical evidence of a UFO. Close encounters of the third kind, contact. From Steven Spielberg, the director of Jaws, comes one of the most ambitious and unusual films ever made. And what you will see has never been seen before. It's a cosmic mystery crossing what many scientists believe will be the next threshold of human experience. It is called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It begins in an Indiana town and leads to one inescapable conclusion. We are not alone. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Certificate A, now showing at the Odeon, Leicester Square.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Phantasm, the film that puts the fun in the funeral. And as for a fiendish story, it does have a berry of a plot. Come prepared to scream, because if this one doesn't scare you, you're already dead. Phantasm from Avco Embassy Pictures. Rated R under 17, not admitted without parent or guardian.
Hello, midnight preview tonight, UA Westwood Theater.
If you are interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal and want to hear from leading researchers in the field, join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium, live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDiv.net.
Heat 'em up. Do, re, be gone.
Tonight, we've been talking to our guest, Stephen Myers, about the Great Pyramid in ancient Egypt. And what is the pyramid? What was it used for? Was it a water pump? That's his theory that he is trying to prove. And it sounds a lot more reasonable, his explanations of how the pyramid was built, what it was used for, than anything I've ever heard in school or on documentaries or anything. It always seemed really silly to me. So these ideas we've talked about tonight, like that, they were a tomb for some dead guy. Who would build all that for that? That it was, just for religious reasons they built it. No, that's a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of energy to build something that massive. It had to be for something. And that's what we need to know. I mean, it seems like not just the pyramids, but everything in anthropology and archaeology, that we are lacking in some big missing link. And I'm a big believer that there was some kind of ancient civilization going 10,000, 15, 20,000 years ago that all these different societies around the world have been mimicking. And the pyramid might be one of the biggest clues to that. When you talk about pyramids all over the world, that have been built by cultures. Maybe they're all mimicking this ancient culture that once existed that harnessed the powers of the pyramid, using it to water for energy. Who knows? These are the concepts we're talking about tonight. And if you've got a question about this or your own ideas or concepts, you can call in and talk with us this last half hour of the show. Call in at 219-230-4444 or at 260-225-9419. There's also the Skype IDs, OOJBland, OO, or JBland Paranormal Soup. We're still taking time for you to call in the show, so please do. But let's go ahead and get back to our guests. Thanks for hanging in there with me, Stephen. We've been talking about, all this ancient technology and all that. Are there other ancient civilizations you felt like were close to this kind of technology besides the Egyptians?
Well, there's a lot of ancient technology out there of various types. The Egyptians, they had C-sections. They had medical medicines, that type of thing. They had birth control. Those are just medical issues. And
birth control,
the Baghdad battery, and a whole host of other things. South America is a lot of our medicines are derived from what witch doctors would use. Aspirin is from the leaves of plants in South America. Now it's synthesized and made artificially, but and a whole host of other things. South America, they did brain surgery on people, and the people lived. So terrapanning, if you will, is what it's called, and remodeled on their skulls, so you know that they lived, and a whole host of other things.
Well, they did in Samaria. There's evidence that they also did these kind of like brain lobotomy kind of surgeries, and even all the way back in Sumerian times. I mean, we're talking ancient past.
Right. So there's a whole host of ancient technologies. A caller mentioned the large stones in South America, and that were used.
Puma Punka.
Yeah, there's a lot of technologies, not just the Great Pyramid, and all over the globe. So it's
in a way, I think there's some way they're all in a way could be connected. Of course, correlation, but they could all be connected. And like I said, there's this of remnants of some kind of civilization we've just lost all knowledge of at some point.
Oh, true. Very true. In the Bronze Age, Europeans, Samoans, were mining up there by the Great Lakes. They were mining copper, and some of the copper artifacts were analyzed, and they determined that that's where the copper came from. So certainly there was world commerce and communication clear back in the Bronze Age. We're talking a long time ago, and probably before. So lots of technology out there.
Well, I've always thought the pyramids are the key to understanding what an ancient civilization was. Who they were. It could be the remnant of that ancient civilization, or it could be that the Great Pyramid could be the last thing left of that ancient civilization that we have, because it's the only thing to stand the test of time.
Well, it's what I'm focusing my life on, is understanding that just segment of distant antiquity. So it's certainly high technology. I'm actually going back to Egypt as a speaker on a tour next year. That will be in November 2020. The tour group is headed by Mark and Andrea, and their website is at sacredsitesjourneys.com. So it's a wonderful tour. We'll take a boat down the Nile and visit all the
man, I wish I could go.
Ancient sites. Oh, well, it's I'm fiscally conservative, but it's worth going in debt to.
I'm fiscally broke, so there ain't no way.
There's nothing like it. So, but I'm giving some exclusive lectures. But again, that's Sacred Sites Journeys is their website, and my website has a link to that. So they can go to thepump.org and find out, about this tour. That it'll fill up quick, so they need to look into it if they're interested.
Now, when was the first? How How long ago? When did you first get to go to Egypt and actually see the pyramids for yourself?
My first time was in 2004, believe it or not. And there was a lot of unrest over in the Middle East. So it was, we had the Great Pyramid to ourselves and for a little while. And it was fun. I have a picture of me in the coffer, laying down in the coffer, the same.
People have had interesting experiences doing that. I've heard people, including Art Bell, who I was a big fan of, have interesting experiences or feelings when they laid in there.
Yeah, Napoleon spent the night and said that it was mystical or whatever, but no, I was in awe of it, just as I was in awe of being when I toured the Hoover Dam, and it's just a cathedral of an industrial cathedral, if you will, the Great Pyramid. Nothing to do with religion to me or anything like that.
Now, I know it goes off the Great Pyramid, but what are your thoughts about the Sphinx in itself? Especially since I've always wondered if the original head was changed on the Sphinx.
Certainly. There's some evidence to indicate that with the research done by Dr. Robert Schock, who again is awesome. He actually looks at the direct physical evidence,
right?
And he indicates that the extreme age of the Sphinx, but also its proportion. Its head is much smaller than the rest of it, and it was probably recarved several times. Just as you said, a lot of the stones in the Valley of the Nile were repurposed for other things. So I was certainly open to believing basically the opposite of anything Egyptologists say.
Well, it looks like somebody. Whenever I look at the Sphinx and I think about that, it just looks like some jerk pharaoh was like, we're going to redo it and we're putting my face right on top of it.
Yeah, why wouldn't they?
Right, yeah. And that's what it looks like, and it looks bad.
Yeah, it's like we're going to carve either Reagan or Obama on Mount Rushmore. Things change through the years, and the Sphinx.
What a way to impress your people,
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff like that, ornamental monolithic structures.
But what was it? If the Sphinx is that old, what was, do you have any idea what its ties are to the Great Pyramid itself or its purpose?
Well, they're physically close to each other. You can walk from one to the other without any problem. So they have that in common. But again, they may have been made, thousands of years apart in some sort of time scale. But and of course, it's hard to say that there's any relationship between the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid, because the evidence of the Sphinx has changed tremendously if we can contend that it was recarved. So it's just hard to say. One is certainly a sculpture, and the other one is an industrial building. At the Hoover Dam, they have some sculptures.
True.
But that's not the primary purpose. Even at the Grand Coulee Dam, that's my favorite dam. I don't know if you have a favorite dam, but the Grand Coulee Dam has a larger than life size sculpture of a bust of Roosevelt. And but that doesn't mean it's a temple to Roosevelt or anything, the Hoover Dam. In fact, here's a bit of information. All hydroelectric dams have vents that point to stars.
You just can't keep knocking on that. I know a lot of people watching this are like, well, ancient aliens, and I love ancient aliens still, even though I think they get a lot of stuff wrong. But the Ryan correlations never sat right with me, because the whole idea is that back at this point in time, it pointed at that star. Well, who cares? Does that prove that it was built then? You still haven't proved when it was built. Just to say that it ends up pointing at that star at that time, that's when it was built. There's no way of proving that.
No. And then again, there's no There's no direct physical evidence specific to the Great Pyramid, which indicates the original builders intended a symbolic purpose for the Great Pyramid, or a religious purpose for the Great Pyramid, or any relationship to the Book of the Dead, or any of that. So all that stuff is made up. It's just made up correlations, just like the Great Pyramid Bible correlation.
What about the Earth parallel lines? That one I've heard that it sits on the 33rd parallel line. Is that it?
It's pretty close to it, but what they were trying to do was put it on the equator, but they got it wrong. See, I can just make up stuff.
They were a little bit off. But that's again another trying to make a correlation to something that what would be the purpose of that?
Parallel. They missed it. They got it wrong.
Well, that's what I say. I mean, what would be the point of it, anyways?
Yeah, but what's the point? I mean, you can just make this stuff up all day long. Actually, it's a worldwide system, okay? And the year 2012 was when the Mayan calendar stopped. And that's when they wanted the Great Pyramid.
Oh my God.
To certain stars. So the stars that they point to at 2012 are the ones they really meant to point to tell us something.
Stuff up. Well, that's the thing. We're talking about making stuff up. I mean, we all had to live through the 2012 doomsday crap.
Yeah.
I mean, being in the paranormal field, being a fan of the paranormal field, listening to many paranormal radio shows, including Art Bell, so many guests about 2012, and that's when the Mayan calendar ends. I'm like, do we even understand what we're talking about? Do we even understand what the Mayans were trying to talk about?
Mm-hmm. But I mean, you can make up these correlations. There's a website called spuriousccorrelations.com. And it talks about the relationship between drownings and the number of films Nicolas Cage was in. Talks about the mathematical.
I'm going to have to check this out.
Between the production of butter and divorces. and it's, you can come up with something, a micrometer. You know what a micrometer is, stuff. They use them in the machine shops. 40 turns per inch on a micrometer. Every turn is 25 thousandths. Well, the Israelites were in the desert for 40 years. Shazam!
But you know what? Our media does that all the time with a lot of stuff. I see a lot of correlations happening that make no sense. That they can't prove.
World, if you have a precise correlation, it means nothing.
Right?
Causation. They make t-shirts that say, causation without a correlation is a logical fallacy. I mean, it's something that real researchers have to guard against. It's easy to just see something or cherry pick data, but it results in phrenology, the correlations between your character traits and the bumps on your head, and the biblical correlation theory and the Orion correlation theory. They all use the same. They all have the same problems in their research techniques. That's why you can't talk to a correlation believer about research techniques. On my YouTube channel, I have some videos about the flawed research methods of the Orion correlation theory, and it goes in much more detail than I can do here. So I hope people go to my YouTube channel, which they can reach from my website, and view those. But we've gone through 25 years of these correlation theory books, and people read them, and they tell a story that some people embrace, just like you can read about in children's stories about the cows jumping over the moon, and it's right there in literature. But those theories, they come and they go, and the Orion correlation theory is on its way down to be rejected because of its flawed research methods.
Let's say you prove your theory. You build a water pump pyramid. Okay, you build a small scale replica. You pull it. You prove it to the world, and then they were to build a large scale, go full out with the technology. This ancient technology. What would it do? How would it change mankind?
Oh, that's a good question. Our nonprofit foundation is a humanitarian organization. On 9/11, 5,000 people, or whatever the exact number, were killed. You know, you could even count the first responders. There's people still dying
from cancer,
the effects of 9/11. Okay, let's say it's 10,000 if you count all those people, and you should. Twice as many people die every day because they don't have clean water to drink, and they don't have water to irrigate their crops. So every day there's 2 9/11s that happen. And what I want to do with our foundation and with this technology is to reduce that number, have less people die every day. We want to develop this ancient technology. It can be built in cottage industries in third world countries, and they can pump water cheaply. You know, instead of building huge hydroelectric dams to generate electricity or using fossil fuels, they can use this clean energy that ancient geniuses were using to
you're not just water pump, but you're talking in its own power plant.
Yes, but that's the first purpose, is in third world countries to save people's lives, but also in first world countries like the United States. They could build them, like in neighborhoods, generate electricity, similar to windmills, only these would operate 24 hours a day. And you could have a collective, if you will, or a person on a farm or that type of thing.
How much power would they be able to, do you have any kind of idea power-wise when you come to the electricity part, how much it could power? Like how much could the Great Pyramid of Giza, how much could it have powered?
Well, it had 2 output shafts that were 8 by 8, and we think it was like 2 massive fire hoses, if you will.
Right.
The amount of water, the exact amount is under scholarly debate, but the technology is scalable. So if you have, let's say you have cheaply pumped water, you can use that water to generate electricity. So that's what we're doing, and there's a lot of technical issues about it to understand.
Yeah, but do you think it could power a small town or power a city?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it can be scalable and also repeatable, if you will. You know, you can have several of them. You know, a nuclear power plant is generally several, if you will.
Right.
The Grand Coulee Dam originally had 18 generators, if you will. So, and then they added a third powerhouse. But so they could have, more than one, if you will. So it's a very versatile and adaptable technology that we're trying to develop. Again,
it seems important in the time and era we live in, when everybody's talking about climate change and carbon emissions, and we need cleaner ways to have fuel and power things. They're like, okay, well, what are those ways? Because we can't just stop, having power. Society will collapse.
Well, we're hoping somebody like Amazon or Google, they have what they
don't
call
hold your breath.
Mary research that they consider that might be a low percentage of success, but if it is successful, it would have a huge return. So we're hoping that we can get some sort of a benefactor or somebody to help with funding. And
this is your problem. This is your problem, though. This kind of power.
Yeah.
This kind of it's just like when Tesla with J.P. Morgan is like, well, I'm going to make free power, free energy, no power lines, and give it out. It's like, well, how am I going to make money?
Yeah. Where do we put the meter to charge people?
Right.
You don't need a meter. Oh, you don't have funding anymore. Yeah, that's what
I'm saying. I don't think Jeff Bezos is going to fund you, buddy.
Yeah. So we're having difficulty, but we're doing educational work. We're doing certainly not as much research in our facility, research and development as we want to, but we are conducting research, and we're doing this tour that's coming up. So I'm excited about that, and a lot of irons in the fire. The magazine articles, books, YouTube channels. So there's a lot of information
Well, I see a lot of, I do see a lot of billionaires running their mouth about climate change and we need to cut fossil fuels and all this stuff, but they sure don't put their money where their mouth is when it comes to like trying to find a solution.
Yeah, that's true. They'll get in their private jet and go somewhere to tell you not to use fossil fuel. I know there's a lot of that, but we're just trying.
Well, this is why I think this is important what you're doing, because it could revolutionize everything. It could. We do. I am one of those people that think that climate change is a lot of doomsday crap, but there is a truth to it. There is, fossil fuels are ridiculous that we're using them. So we could really use this right now. We could really use this kind of ancient technology to pull us from the brink. According to, some people, we're at the brink or we're already past, we're too far gone. And then who cares? I've heard that on the radio today. It's like scientists now today say we're already too far gone. Then, okay, then let's just stop talking about it. We'll wait till the end comes.
Well, it's a technology that I think is environmentally friendly.
Right.
I always say that the builders were geniuses and had some profound understanding of physics that they used to develop technologies. I
mean, would you have any pollution with your system?
There wouldn't be. It's
exactly.
There's not. So that's the issue. Even fossil fuels were an alternative source of fuel because before, or an alternative source of oil, if you will, because they were using whale oil.
True. Yes.
And, for a lot of purposes, lighting, with candles and for the oil and everything, and then they use this alternative of fossil fuels. Well, we are in the alternative energy business, our foundation. So that's what we're trying to do.
The Industrial Revolution started with water. It started with using mills and water mills to power things.
Right.
So I've always water is a powerful force. It can be used for many things if done right. And
that's true. I tell people that at our foundation, we're using a system where we're powering our laptop with water. And then people are really impressed by that. But, yeah, you laugh, but people are impressed. But you just plug the cord into the wall and charge the battery. I've been in the Northwest. It's hydroelectricity.
Exactly.
Anybody can do that. Yeah, anybody can do that. So it's funny. And again, the High Aswan Dam is used to pump water. People say, oh, no, it generates electricity. Well, the irrigation pumps in Egypt is connected with wires to the High Aswan Dam. And also they built the High Aswan Dam, which ended the yearly inundation. So the electricity was more important or more viable than the one-time flood in a desert. So it's just interesting to think about it in just a technological aspect.
Well, that's what fascinates me with your theory, that if this is true, it could revolutionize energy. It could revolutionize, you talk about it from the water pump and irrigation, but energy-wise, it could revolutionize everything. Free energy.
It would decentralize the production of energy. Right now, we all pay our monthly bill for our electricity, and the electricity is generated in massive, large-scale infrastructure. But we want to decentralize that,
and some people have died probably trying to do that.
Yeah,
you might want to watch it.
Yeah, I hear you. Edison actually preferred DC because it can be centralized, not because DC was inferior and he didn't know what was going on. Alternating current is wonderful, but you ultimately have to have huge hydroelectric dams like at Niagara or that type of thing. But it is very good to transmit alternating current long distances. But Edison was into direct current. He had a vision of having more like wind turbines and other things to decentralize the production of electricity.
Community power plants, basically.
Yeah, be beholden to no one and generate, even in cities, the electricity that we need, but don't have a monthly bill. That's what we're trying to do, and that's what the ancients geniuses who built the Great Pyramid did.
Yeah, well, there was money geniuses back in the day when it came to Edison and Tesla. And I said, Edison, Tesla. Well, we're going to go with Tesla because we can find a way to make money with that. And then later on, Tesla's like, hey, wait a second. I found a way we can transmit it for free. Oh, sorry, Tesla, you're out now.
Yeah.
There's the door, buddy. That's what it's about, money. That's the problem.
State of affairs. It really is. So, but we have the internet and we have shows like you. The the means of production is being democratized, if you will. You can have a show, NBC can have a show, anybody can have a show.
We'll see how much longer. I don't know.
So we're going to democratize the production of electricity and also make a cheaper method to have irrigation in third world countries. So that's what our
So this is what I fear, though. What I fear, Stephen, is that you get the money. Let's say you get the money to build this thing. And then you find a location. I'm going to build it here. And then some zoning person or somebody says, nope, you can't do this. Nope, you can't do this. Nope, you can't do this.
Oh, yeah.
You can face a lot more challenges because there's an industry that does not want you to succeed.
Oh, yeah. Well, I believe in truth, and truth is the most powerful force in the universe. I'm up against Egyptologists, archaeologists, people that think the Great Pyramid was a death ray and or a tomb or a granary. So yeah, I'm up against everybody. But the Egyptologists can just go sit on a stick when it comes to it, because you can build it. They can't say nothing about it. I'm fearing for you for the electric company coming in. No. Yeah. There's that. The guy that made the water the car that ran on water.
Right.
Stanley Myers. He is reputed to have been poisoned.
Poisoned. Yeah, he's not reputed. He's dying saying I've been poisoned.
Yeah. When he was talking to funders, oh, that's too bad. He just croaked all of a sudden. But yeah,
he literally was yelling, "I've been poisoned" as he was dying. The reports say
it's a terrible thing, and it's hard to redevelop even what Stanley Myers did, and it's hard to read in No Relation. He spells his name differently.
Right. Let's hope there's no relation or correlation between the two of you one day. Okay.
Right. But the Great Pyramid gives up its secrets very slowly. So we're plugging along. We've made a lot of progress. I've been doing this for quite a while, and we made tremendous progress. A lot of interest. People that work in shipyards or truck drivers, car mechanics, people that actually do something in the real world. They really respond and embrace this idea of water locks and a production line of a method to build the Great Pyramid. Those people embrace it, but archaeologists and Egyptologists, no, it's they can't go with it.
Well, thank you, Stephen, so much for being on the show. I'd love to have you again. One last time, get out your website and YouTube channel for people so they know where to find you.
Well, everything is located at our website at thepump.org. That's the website for our foundation. You can contact me through email, works the best. We also have from that website our link to our Facebook page, YouTube channel, and all of that. So take a look. I just ask people to bear the burden of the responsibility to conduct their own research and actually read my books. The books are available as Kindle ebooks or soft cover, and but just find out about the research. Don't just believe correlations or the tomb theory, but learn this whole new aspect of how the Great Pyramid was built and why it was built.
Well, thank you, Stephen. That's it for the show, guys. Next week, we're going to have Robert Youngham to talk about his experiences down in South America with ancient cultures. And so we got more of this kind of talk coming next Sunday, same bad time, same bad channel, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. or 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Central, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you again, Stephen, for being on. We'll get you on again. All right, guys, have a great night. I hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you next Sunday.
Thanks again.